Chapter 1045. Did the nine nether spirit come from behind the stone door at the bottom of the sinkhole? If it was really as it said, if you were to kick it down now, wouldn't it be instantly beaten back to its original form and return to the starting point? Chu Feng pondered and felt a special sense of excitement, as if he was about to do something bad. Chu Feng laughed. It must have taken a lot of effort to climb out of the sinkhole after so many years. Now that it was finally free, the nine nether spirit would probably want to die if it were to return to its original state. Second brother, it's really been hard on you. Chu Feng's little face couldn't hold back anymore. He smiled like a flower bud and said, "It really wasn't easy to climb out from such a deep place." Gu Chenhai was immediately dumbfounded and maintained a silence. He was also thinking that this damned child might not have any good ideas again. At the same time, he wanted to curse his second brother. He wanted to shout, "I'm your second grandpa." Chu Feng intimidated him and said, "Second brother, I really don't want to kick you off the stage. You'd better hurry up and hand over your most powerful breathing technique. Let me practice it." The sarcophagus was silent for a moment before sigh was heard. "Little bastard, don't call me second brother. It's disgusting. Even my old skin is covered in goosebumps. Let's make an equal exchange. I'll teach you the Shaoyang fist in exchange for my freedom. How about it?" "Sure. If there's no problem with the fist technique, I can swear that I'll give you your freedom at the right time. If it's the strongest breathing technique, then you'll be able to escape even sooner," Chu Feng promised. The nine nether spirit was very straightforward and immediately recited a fist scripture. Chu Feng was extremely focused. It was as if he was listening to the voice of the great Tao. He remained motionless and carefully studied the scripture. Very soon, he closed his eyes and silently comprehended. This Shaoyang fist was indeed somewhat related to the Xiaoyu fist he had learned. Their attributes were completely opposite. Could it be that he would be able to punch out yang fish in the future? With a whoosh, Chu Feng's whole body was covered in flames. His yang qi was extremely abundant, making him feel extremely comfortable. He felt that this Shaoyang fist was very much to his liking. What a heaven-defying aptitude. You've only just started, and you've already reached the initial stage. An aged voice came from the stone coffin, carrying a hint of surprise. However, Chu Feng didn't relax his vigilance and didn't fall for this trick. Although he was practicing fist techniques, he was only limited to his physical body and sensing the scripture. He didn't cultivate the fist scripture's profound meaning into his soul light. However, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of terrifying fiery light. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were actually covered in raging flames, about to be burned, making his body feel intense pain. Then, Chu Feng's 7 apertures spewed fire, and for a moment, even his soul light was about to be covered by the blazing flames. "Old ghost, you dare to trick me!" Chu Feng shouted. He hurriedly stopped the practice of the punching scripture, but it was not extinguished immediately. This had ignited the internal fire in his body. If it was in the past, Chu Feng naturally wouldn't be afraid, but his current body was too tender, still that of a child. His evolution level was extremely low just starting out. "Oh, I'm old in the end, and I've also died once. How can I still clearly remember the breathing technique and punching scripture from my previous life? Even if I have a few memory fragments, they're all incomplete techniques. Amen. I remember now. This should be our lineage's son sacrificial technique. I want to help you lay down the most solid foundation first. Don't be discouraged. The longer you persevere, the greater your future accomplishments will be. Let's see if you can break the record." After that, it pointed at the side and recited the mysterious scripture with an earnest and inculcating attitude. Get lost. Chu Feng should just bang his head against the wall and die if he still believed it. It still wanted to deceive him? This was truly unbearable. He was already very cautious and careful. He practiced the fist technique and not the soul, but in the end, this prehistoric technique was actually so strange that it could still burn his internal organs. This was an extremely strange punching scripture that guided out the exuberant potential within his body. It opened up in an instant and ignited his internal organs. If it was used well, it was naturally an ultimate technique. However, if someone harbored ill intentions and used it to harm others, then it would definitely be considered an extremely sinister technique. When Chu Feng stopped, the flames in his internal organs were still burning. This 9 nether gui was very sinister, and the special punching scripture it passed to him was too terrifying. It must have been a famous secret scripture that harmed people even in prehistoric times. The 9 nether gui opened its mouth and said, "Child, come and beg me. You don't need to pay too much. Bring some sacrifices and use the blood of evolved humans to worship the stone coffin, and I'll help you solve your problem." Chu Feng ignored it and quickly used the little fish fist. A cold aura surged up in an instant, and light rain began to fall around him. The rain turned into small black fish swimming in the air. At the same time, his body was also being nourished. The flames in his body were extinguished, and his internal organs were permeated by a black energy. He felt much more comfortable and was no longer in any danger. The 9 nether gui in the stone coffin was dumbfounded. It really wanted to bite Chu Feng to death. He was actually from that lineage. Second brother, you dare to harm big brother? I'll beat you to death. After Chu Feng got out of his predicament, he picked up a stone and threw it at the stone coffin, preparing to smash it into the heavenly pit. "Stop! If you have anything to say, this old man has crawled for 10,000 years, and it has only been a few years since I came up. Everything can be discussed." The 9 nether gui shouted. Chu Feng stopped and rubbed his chin. He pondered for a while. Was what this savage creature said true? What if it actually liked the dark world? After all, this thing was afraid of lightning and didn't like yang energy. Hey, it's really a narrow road for enemies. I actually met this little bastard. It's that bastard picked up from the G clan. "Eighth uncle, you have to be careful. There's something strange about his body. Last time, third brother and I suffered a great loss." A youth appeared not far away with a smile on his face. He was very surprised that he could actually meet this damn kid here. At the same time, he was also very happy. It was the youth of the Thunder Clan, Lei Ling. Last time, he lured Ji Hu into the forest and had his third brother, Lei Yun, torture Ji Hu. Even a few teeth were slapped away. Beside him was a man in his 30s. He was full of vigor, and his eyes were cold. He was 3 meters tall, and the people of this tribe were generally tall. Lei Ling revealed a cold smile. He looked left and right, and after confirming that there was no one, he said, "Eighth uncle, just directly throw him to death. I always feel that there's something wrong with this little bastard. Don't act recklessly. This place is very dangerous," Chu Feng warned. Inadvertently, he glanced at the stone coffin at the edge of the heavenly pit. In the end, Lei Ling and the middle-aged man both sneered and directly pounced over. Chu Feng dodged. Separated by a distance of more than 100 meters, he fled towards the back of the stone coffin. Buzz. The next moment, a terrifying thing happened. The uncle and nephew of the Thunder Clan laughed sinisterly. When they pounced over like a big bird, their bodies suddenly shriveled. All the blood in their bodies rushed out and entered the stone coffin. The two of them were still 10 meters away from the stone coffin, exceeding the 10-meter warning line Dong Qing had mentioned. Afterwards, the two people's skin and bones fell to the ground and instantly turned into dust. In just a split second, the two of them were as dead as could be. They disappeared cleanly. Chu Feng's scalp went numb. He had finally witnessed the cruelty and terror of the 9 nether demons. The scene before him was definitely the best proof. He felt that he couldn't play with fire anymore. He had to avoid self-immolation. He quickly arranged a number of divine magnetic stones. They glowed and intertwined with each other. Unexpectedly, they were connected to form a magnetic mirror. "Go!" Chu Feng threw it into the heavenly pit. Although he had understood the situation below from Dong Qing, he also wanted to use his domain techniques to investigate the specific data below. After the seal at the bottom of the heavenly pit was undone, the bottom was tens of thousands of kilometers deep. The special luminous mirror formed by the divine magnetic stones rapidly sank into the ground like a stream of light and reflected some scenes. There was a pair of ancient stone doors. They were very grand and tall, and carved with dark crows as if they were about to flap their wings and fly out. The stone doors were very majestic. Even though there was only a small gap, it was enough for an elephant to run in. Inside was the dark nether kingdom filled with dense death energy. A shriveled black gourd was seeping out blood. There was something sealed within it. In truth, everything was quite blurry and couldn't be seen clearly. The magnetic mirror's feedback was limited, and what made Chu Feng's heart palpitate the most was that boundless dark netherland. Chu Feng rapidly set up a domain and used the magnetic mirror to calculate the specific depth and coordinates. He then activated a domain and prepared to send the 9 nether demons inside. Don't. Let's talk this out. A loud cry came from the stone coffin. Logically speaking, you're so afraid. I should think about whether you're faking it and whether I'm playing into your hands. What if you really want to go in? But you're so cunning and sinister. I reckon you're trying to disturb my thoughts. Chu Feng said. He reckoned that the other party was both fake and real. He was alternately interfering with his judgment. He then said, "But what am I afraid of? You won't be able to move even if I throw you into a cesspool. It'll take you a long time to crawl a short distance, right? I have plenty of time. You can crawl slowly down there and wait for me to think of a way to deal with you. Then I'll deal with you slowly. Ancient Dujo, I believe you. Just because you're so lacking in morals, you must be my big brother from prehistoric times. Beans burn when they're boiling. Beans weep in the cauldron. I'm your second brother." Before being sent away, that old fellow let out a heart-wrenching scream. He was truly terrified as the coffin was knocked against, and he struggled with all his might. But now, Chu Feng didn't believe him. He had almost run into problems while practicing his fist techniques. It was indeed dangerous for him to face this 9 nether demon with his current small body. He felt that he should wait for Dongqing and the others to return before deciding. He would throw him down first. Chi! The stone coffin disappeared as it was sent to the bottom of the sinkhole by the teleportation domain. It passed through the gap in the stone door and smashed into the dark nether. Chu Feng saw a blurry scene through the magnetic mirror he had placed down earlier. Within the dark nether earth, the stone coffin was shaking violently and trembling from the impact. It wanted to escape the dark nether at the speed of a snail. It was as if he could hear the cries of the 9 nether demon. It was panicking and filled with boundless terror as it tried to escape. How useless. What's the big deal? Didn't you crawl out from there? Chu Feng used another domain technique and could transmit his voice over a long distance. He could hear the cries from below. As expected, the 9 nether demon was crying out in terror. Chu Feng was astonished. This fellow's origins were shocking when he was alive. Now that he had returned, his strength was terrifying. How could he be scared to such an extent? Chu Feng said, "Reflect on your actions in the underworld. Perhaps one day I'll enlighten you. After all, it's rare to see such a shameless and savage creature like you. You might come in handy in the future." Then, he couldn't continue speaking. His hair stood on end, and he felt a chill from head to toe. He saw a pale, bloodless palm reach out from the dark nether earth. Then, it grabbed a corner of the stone coffin and slowly dragged it down into the earth. After seeing this scene, Chu Feng jumped up and fled. He raised his little butt and rushed into the forest. Along the way, he threw out a divine magnet stone and set up a teleportation domain. He rushed in and escaped without a trace. At the last moment, he heard the 9 nether demons' angry roar. "Ancient dustboat, F*CK, your grandpa? I'll come back." Chu Feng pondered. This fellow must have really crawled out from here. It was just that he didn't know if he had really crawled for 10,000 years. Just like that, he was beaten back to his starting point. Who cares? Chu Feng ran away. He wanted to find a place to hide and observe the situation. He wanted to study the special fifth scripture he had obtained from the 9 nether demon. Chapter 1046. Chu Feng stood on a tall mountain dozens of miles away and looked into the distance. Apart from the black fog rising from the sinkhole and the bone-chilling cries of the dark crows, there were no other changes. After a while, everything returned to normal. He waited for a long time before cleaning up the aftermath and clearing away the divine magnet. Next, He went to Lightning Strike Mountain and erased all traces before returning to the tribe. Lesser yin, lesser yang, which is stronger? Yin and yang complement each other, and one is king in the heavens. In a divine temple, Chu Feng was dawdling. It had been 2 days since he returned from the sinkhole. He had been studying the sun body, sacrificial art, and the strange fifth scripture, wanting to fuse yin and yang together. In the end, he had ignited himself again. His internal organs were all burning, and not just once. He had turned into a flaming man several times. Luckily, he had the little fish fist. Chu Feng practiced and calmed the flames of the sun. He reckoned that the little fish fist could be called the lesser yin fist. Is the sun body, sacrificial art, this 9 nether beast gave me just a harmful technique? But it can instantly unlock a person's potential. It's really extraordinary. Chu Feng studied it for a long time, but still had no clue. The so-called lesser yin and lesser yang merging into one was just his wishful thinking. He had almost refined himself to death. Moreover, the so-called lesser yang fist, which was also the sun body sacrificial art, could not be practiced alone. It was full of danger every time. It's a bit different. 4 days later, Chu Feng experienced abnormalities. He would burn himself every time, but once he recovered, he would feel his body warm. After several days, he was actually full of energy. For a moment, Chu Feng no longer frowned. His little face was very bright, and he was smiling like a fox that had stolen a chicken. Second brother, your grandson is really not a good thing. He wanted to harm me at that time, but you didn't expect me to find out. So this is the secret art of your lineage. Chu Feng was sure that this thing was useful. Moreover, it was very useful. Even a city couldn't describe it. Just think, it could unearth the mysteries of the body and open the treasury of the human body. It could unseal step by step and release one's potential. How astonishing was this? Evolution was to break the shackles of the body and continuously realize the transition of life. This sun-body sacrificial technique was extremely effective. Those who didn't understand this might kill themselves if they tried to use this method, but if they could persevere, they would gain great benefits. Some of the words of the Netherworld God were true. The longer one persisted in this method, the more benefits it would bring to oneself. Especially since Chu Feng had mastered the Shaoyin Fist scripture, he could forcibly extinguish the fire when he couldn't bear it anymore, so he didn't have to worry about being burned by the sun's sacrificial art. Second brother, thank you for this generous gift. No wonder you felt as if I had eaten a dead child after learning that I practiced Shaoyin Fist. So that's why. The ultimate breathing technique was the foundation, and this kind of wondrous technique was a small shortcut and auxiliary on the path of cultivation. Its existence was inevitable. The evolutionary civilization of the prehistoric era was truly unique and brilliant. I still want to obtain a few more similar spells. Chu Feng was very happy. This time, he had not wasted his time and gained a lot. From then on, he had to burn himself every day to refine the potential in the cells of his body so that they would naturally flow out in strands. Of course, the breathing technique was the foundation, the ultimate great Tao of evolution. Now that Dongqing was no longer around, Chu Feng didn't need to practice in secret. From robbery induction to thunderous roar, each session would last for a long time. This young body practiced the breathing technique from the beginning, accompanied by the vigorous aura of a young life. It was incomparably suitable. Chu Feng felt that the robbery induction was becoming more and more compatible with him now that he was practicing it. The effects were astonishing. After being picked up and brought to the tribe for over 2 months, he could already run like the wind. His body was light and healthy, and he dared to leap over cliffs like an agile mountain ape. At this time, his small body actually emitted the sound of wind and thunder when he brandished his fists. Anyone who saw this would certainly be shocked. Such a young child possessing such an ability was too astonishing. In the following month, Chu Feng would circulate his breathing technique every morning and practice his fist technique. He would also analyze the minerals left behind by Dongqing. During this period, he would often enter the mountains and earnestly compare them, searching for something. That was because he was a domain researcher, and his understanding of the mountains and rivers far surpassed others. After his painstaking search and deciphering, he had actually reduced dozens of minerals to their original state and found over half of them. Now, he dared to take the risk and enter the mountains mainly because he had a jade tablet with a small black fish carved on it. Dongqing said this belonged to that young miss, and that it was quite powerful. Xu Feng had experimented with it before. Once this thing was activated, the blossoming black runes could be used by him. It was enough to protect himself when encountering vicious birds and fierce beasts. However, what made him speechless was that apart from a few rabbits with sharp teeth who wanted to eat him, a 10-meter-tall golden-backed lone wolf he encountered along the way didn't pay any attention to him. Xu Feng thought about it and felt relieved. This kind of vicious beast had gained intelligence. He reckoned that in its eyes, his small size wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between its teeth. He was no different from a beetle. Roar! Suddenly, Xu Feng heard a terrifying lion's roar. It shook the heaven and earth as it came from the distant mountain forest. At the same time, it was accompanied by the angry roar of a human. Xu Feng was startled because the voice sounded familiar. He quickly ran toward the mountain forest. He recognized it from afar. It was precisely that sixth uncle who liked to wear garish animal skin clothes. Last time, he had arranged to meet someone after dusk. Xu Feng didn't know if he was going to meet his soulmate. Normally, elders like him wouldn't participate in hunting. Normally, only people like him would enter the mountains to hunt and solve problems when the beasts in the mountains were too ferocious. It could be said that every elder was a treasure. They were all experts who had fought and survived since their youth and were revered by the people in the tribe. But now what did Xu Feng see? Sixth uncle's leg had been torn off by a strange gray lion, and a claw had gouged a bloody hole in his abdomen. His life was in danger. Xu Feng held the jade tablet in one hand and passed through the mountain forest. He charged toward the gray lion like a cannonball. At this moment, he saw that there was something wrong with the gray lion's state. Its eyes were scarlet red, and it was incomparably crazy. Even though it was a ferocious beast with a wild nature, there was definitely something wrong with its mind. This was a lion at the golden body level. It was at the same realm as Sixth Uncle, but after falling into this crazy state, it was even more powerful. Before the lion's claws could completely finish off Sixth Uncle, Xu Feng collided with the gray lion. It roared and flew out, crashing into a huge rock. The forest trees and rocks shattered into pieces. In this desolate border, even evolvers at the golden body level couldn't fly. It could be seen that the laws of heaven and earth were perfect, and at the same time, they were greatly suppressed. The gray lion was only 3 meters long and looked very ordinary, but its ferocious nature flared up. It flipped over and was about to pounce and kill Xu Feng. But at this moment, just as it leaped up, the scarlet light in its eyes receded. It suddenly fell to the ground as if it was exhausted and died a violent death. Some wounds on its body were left by Sixth Uncle. Its internal organs are melting. Xu Feng opened his fiery eyes and saw that it seemed to be a fatal injury caused by Sixth Uncle's palm print. But now he understood that it wasn't. This was the exhaustion of its life force. It was melting its internal organs. It was strange, as if it had been manipulated and tampered with. But there were no traces left behind. Xu Feng didn't have time to think too much. Saving people was more important. Without another word, he poured out a giant black pill the size of a human head from the spatial jade bottle that Dongqing gave him. "Hold on, Sixth Uncle," shouted Xu Feng. He crushed the big pill and applied medicine on him. Sixth Uncle's injuries were too severe. One of his legs had been torn off, and his abdomen had been pierced. At the same time, there was a terrifying wound on his neck. It was almost completely severed, and his head was about to fall off. Xu Feng applied medicine and bandaged him anxiously. If he had come a little later, this old man would definitely have died tragically. He wouldn't have been able to save him even if he wanted to. Thunder Clan? It must be the Thunder Clan. Sixth Uncle's eyes were dim, and he was almost at the end of his rope. He kept spitting out bloody foam from his mouth as he repeated that sentence. Without a doubt, he also saw that there was something wrong with the gray lion. When Chu Feng brought Sixth Uncle back to the tribe, the whole tribe was shocked. Sixth Uncle, Ji Haishan, and the others represented the strongest group of people in the Ji clan. Today, one of them almost died. Fortunately, the minerals that Chu Feng used to steam and cook were not thrown away. They were all made into giant pills with excellent effects. Sixth Uncle recovered some of his energy. Last year, fourth brother perished together with a white hedgehog. His whole body was covered in spear-like snow-white spikes. At that time, I felt that something was wrong. It was strange. Sixth Uncle panted violently. When he spoke excitedly, the wounds on his body opened up and blood flowed continuously. The leg that had just been reattached was almost severed again. Chu Feng was surprised. In the Yang realm, the laws of heaven and earth were perfect. The suppression on evolvers was too ruthless. It was difficult for golden Arhut-level creatures to regrow their limbs if they were not treated in time. If they were decapitated, they would die. Sixth Uncle's face was ashen. He was incomparably sad and indignant as he said, "After experiencing it personally today, I'm even more certain that no matter if it's this lion or that golden Arhut-level white hedgehog from back then, they were all tampered with and controlled by someone. They were made mad, and their strength increased greatly just to murder us." Ji Haishan said, "Thunder Clan, it must be them. They have been fighting with us openly and covertly for over 100 years. Especially in recent years, they have become more and more tyrannical. They are really becoming more and more vicious. Aren't they afraid that the agreement between the tribes will take effect? Their actions will incur sanctions." Another elder frowned. "They didn't take the initiative to attack. We only suspect that they did something to control the ferocious beasts to harm people, but we have no evidence. It seems that the information we received is true. Someone in this clan has obtained the remnant of the myriad beast scripture." The more the people in the tribe spoke, the angrier they became. They wanted nothing more than to kill the Thunder Clan. "I heard that an elder from the Ji clan has fallen. My condolences." At this moment, a member of the Thunder Clan passed by the tribe and said this with a faint smile on his face. "Can you speak human language? The murderer is you guys, right? Otherwise, how would you know that someone from my clan is in trouble?" A robust man from the Ji clan couldn't bear it anymore and shouted. The person from the Thunder Clan put on a fake smile and said, "Oh, didn't you guys carry an old man in just now? The ground was covered in blood. I reckon that something has happened on your side." Then he left with his head held high. Chu Feng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He decided to help the tribe deal with some dangers and troubles before he left. They really went too far. He reckoned that he was about to leave this place and enter the dragon's nest in the depths of the desolate border. Chapter 1047. The people of the Thunder Clan were too arrogant. They had meticulously set up a trap and used the gray lion to ambush and kill Sixth Uncle. Now, they even dared to send people to investigate the situation outside the tribe. This was especially the case when this person didn't know how to restrain himself, actually daring to spout nonsense, mistakenly believing that Sixth Great Uncle died, taking joy in his misfortune and ridiculing him. This was truly intolerable. There is someone who secretly hunted down the tribe's elders, and afterwards they still dared to ridicule and slap their faces. This was a death grudge. Who? Ji Haishan leaped up, leaping dozens of meters away to catch up to the man. "What are you trying to do?" That person from the Thunder Clan berated. "I'll cripple you." Ji Haishan's fist was as big as a basin, and it directly punched out. The entire area was filled with sand and rocks, and the sound of wind and thunder could be heard. If they didn't do anything after being humiliated, what face would the Ji clan have left? "Ji Haishan, what are you doing? Do you think there's no one in my Thunder Clan? You're stirring up conflict between the tribes for no reason. You're ignoring the agreement between the tribes. Just wait for your punishment." A loud roar came from afar, and a skinny middle-aged man with a scar on his face arrived. He was the Thunder Flood Dragon. Back then, when Ji Haishan picked up Chu Feng, he met the hunting captain of the Thunder Clan on his way back. He was even drenched in urine by Chu Feng. His movements were extremely fast. With a single leap, he covered a distance of several dozen meters as he charged toward Ji Haishan, intending to fight him. Bang! Puff! However, Ji Haishan's attack had already produced results. He had already sent the person who had spoken rudely flying. More than a dozen of his bones were broken, and he coughed up a large mouthful of blood. His entire person was dispirited, and he was completely crippled. Boom! The lightning flood dragon and Ji Haishan clashed. Both of them were extremely powerful. In the distance, a group of people from the Thunder Clan was rapidly approaching. The Thunder Flood Dragon shouted, "Don't be afraid. This time, the Ji clan attacked us first. If they don't give us a satisfactory explanation, then breaking through their stronghold won't be a problem. They are in the wrong, but we are in the right. The tribal agreements cannot restrict us." That's right, Ji clan. Are you looking to die? You dare to stir up a dispute between the tribes? If you really make a ruckus, just wait for the big tribes in the depths of the plains to come and exterminate your entire clan. Kill these people from the Ji clan. They provoked us first. After that group of people rushed over, all of them were extremely vicious. They held broadswords, pikes, and other things in their hands. Their auras were cold and dense as they attacked with murderous intent. A group of people from the Ji clan naturally rushed out to welcome them. They couldn't let Ji Haishan suffer a loss. Everyone was so angry that their faces turned ashen. Today, the Thunder Clan had really gone too far. They wanted to harm the Ji clan's elder and even came over to pick a fight. In the end, they even put the blame on him, making him furious. Blood splashed out as soon as they made contact. Both sides had people injured, both sides taking action extremely ruthlessly. Chu Feng's breathing quickened. These bastards were too hateful. He gave it some thought and decided not to use the jade tablet Dongqing had given him. Instead, he began to activate the domains within the tribe. Recently, he had buried quite a few magnetic stones around the tribe. Now that it was slightly activated, the ground shone as if molten iron was flowing. A few lines quickly rushed out of the tribe. The Thunder Flood Dragon cried out. His feet were in severe pain as he stepped on the ground. A moment ago, an inexplicable energy had pierced through his soles from the ground, causing him to stagger as his feet were covered in blood. While his body was swaying, Ji Haishan's white tiger fist let out a tiger's roar. White light surged, and the Thunder Flood Dragon was blasted away, causing him to cough up blood repeatedly. Similarly, there were also glowing runes lighting up where the others were. That was the domain energy shooting out, causing the Thunder Clan members to cry out in alarm. Within moments, the battle situation had completely changed. The Ji clan's youths were merciless and attacked ruthlessly. These people were either spitting out blood from their mouths or using sharp blades to cut into their flesh. For a moment, the scene was a bit bloody. "Don't kill them." At this time, a clan elder shouted. That was because this was very serious. If it were just a conflict and armed melee, then it was fine as long as no lives were harmed. But if all of them were killed, it would indicate that the two tribes were at war. The impact would be huge. Clan Elder, isn't it better to kill them? They dare to harm sixth uncle. They are truly courting death. A youth said angrily. The clan elder said, "You have to know that we are only a small tribe and must abide by the agreement between the tribes. Even a Thunder Clan is the same. They don't dare to attack us with their entire clan, so they can only use underhanded methods. Otherwise, they will be condemned by the large tribes on the plains and be exterminated." There were rules above that forbade tribes from annexing each other or engaging in large-scale wars. Whoever dared to act recklessly would be exterminated. Ji Haishan, just you wait. The Thunder Flood Dragon and the others supported each other as they limped away with hatred in their eyes. This is too aggrieving. They want to kill sixth uncle, but in the end, we have to swallow our anger. In addition, it is almost certain that fourth uncle didn't die in an accident. This is a great hatred, a youth roared. This matter naturally isn't over. I will report this to the officiator and the other large tribes. The Thunder Clan has broken the rules and must be severely punished. Someone was indignant and said, "What severe punishment?" In the end, the thunder is louder than the rain. Someone from the Thunder clan broke free from this mountainous region and entered the depths of the plains to become an expert. Everyone will have to give them some face. No matter. We have a temple at the back of the mountain. Once that fairy returns, we don't have to be afraid of anyone, a clan elder said in a low voice. As for the temple, it had been in ruins for countless years. It had long since become a ruin. Several years ago, Dongqing and her 2 servants came, and only then did it recover its vitality. However, they always kept a low profile. Apart from Ji Haishan and the others, no one from the other tribes knew that they were experts. A group of people surrounded 6th Uncle's side and discovered that he had stabilized. His broken leg had healed very well. At the same time, someone asked Shu Feng, "What's up with the runes on the ground?" "I buried the divine magnet that Sister Dongqing gave me in the village. It can form a domain." Chu Feng pushed the blame onto Dongqing and the others. At night, the bonfire in front of the tribe flickered. The people of the Ji clan were discussing after dinner. They still felt angry because the people from the Thunder clan were too much of a bully. Chu Feng was packing his things and preparing to set off. He was going to teach the Thunder clan a lesson. However, at this time, he felt that something was wrong. The sky darkened and instantly covered the moon and stars. A large shadow was cast down and accompanied by the sound of flapping wings. Many people raised their heads and cried out loudly. Some of the children were frightened. That was a flock of bats. Every one of them was 2 to 3 meters long. Their entire bodies were silvery white and incomparably ferocious. They simply blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Who knew how many tens of thousands of them swooped down towards the Ji clan? There are actually so many silver bats. Heavens, could it be that the Thunder clan is playing tricks again? Are they going to destroy our Ji clan? Someone cried out loudly. These silver bats were vicious beasts. Although they couldn't be considered the extremely powerful ones, their numbers were great. Moreover, there were a few bat kings hidden among them. They were extremely difficult to deal with. Buzz! The air trembled. Tens of thousands of bats opened their mouths and emitted silver ripples. They gathered together and slammed down like a vast ocean. It was as if they were going to flatten the Ji clan. This was the sound wave attack of the silver bats. This kind of energy was extremely terrifying. Chu Feng frowned. So many vicious beasts had gathered together and even used their innate secret arts. If he hadn't buried the magnetic stones in advance and laid down a domain, a bloodbath would definitely have occurred. The Ji clan might have been massacred again. Chu Feng called Ji Haishan and the elders over. In front of them, he told them how to activate the magnetic stones and the domain in the tribe. With a boom, a dazzling light soared up. The runes formed a light screen which covered the sky. At this time, the silver ripples that were smashing down were all blocked. Moreover, a large number of bats crashed into the light screen. All of them screamed miserably and turned into blood. Just now, the men, women, old and young in the tribe felt their scalps go numb. They felt that the odds were against them. But now, the scene before them directly caused them to be dumbfounded. Blocked? It wasn't just blocked. They saw large numbers of vicious beasts being killed and falling down continuously. Corpses were everywhere and slid down the light screen outside the tribe. Every time it attacked, thousands of silver bats would be killed or injured. This was simply suicide. In the end, tens of thousands of bats scattered and rushed into the night sky. Then, Chu Feng moved. He quietly left the tribe and entered the night sky. He was as agile and silent as a cheetah as he prepared to hunt. He chased after the Bat Kings and ran on the ground. If there was someone controlling the bats, it would definitely be the Bat Kings. Found them. Before long, he saw a few Bat Kings land in the distance. There were a few people sitting cross-legged on the green boulder. Their hair was white, and they weren't young anymore. How hateful. We actually failed. That should be a domain. Why does the Ji clan have one? These old men were all very powerful. They were all at the Golden Arhut realm and were elders of the Thunder clan. The rumors were true. Someone from the Thunder clan had obtained the Myriad Beast scripture. Not only was he cultivating it, but several elders were studying it together. They were the ones controlling the vicious beasts and secretly harming the G clan's elders. There's another child. They were astonished to see Chu Feng running over. They were all astonished. A child dared to appear here? You old grandsons, get over here. I was just about to finish you all off. Chu Feng shouted. He held the jade tablet in one hand and a shiny longsword that was even taller than him in the other. He charged over just like that. Crush him to death. An old man said in a low voice. Boom! A withered large hand pressed forward, wanting to directly kill Chu Feng. Unfortunately, he only touched a metal plate. Chu Feng's jade tablet shone and black runes blossomed. The Yin fish swam in the air and blocked his attack. Moreover, after being deeply trapped in the black light, he couldn't budge an inch. Chi! Although Chu Feng was small, his movements were vigorous. The moment he leapt up, the long sword in his hand swung out. Puffed! A head fell to the ground. That old man was killed with his eyes wide open. We've encountered a monster. Let's go together and kill him. An old man shouted. Some people went forward, but others decisively wanted to escape. None of you can leave. Chu Feng berated. Puffed! Pooh! This was a massacre. The jade tablet shone and imprisoned this area. This was the jade tablet of the Divine Temple's fairy. Dongqing had temporarily lent it to Chu Feng, so its power was unimaginable. In the blink of an eye, several heads fell to the ground. They couldn't move just now and were waiting to be killed. Chu Feng turned around. He didn't stop and threw the corpses to the silver bats in the night sky. In a short moment, these people were dismembered and devoured cleanly. Not long after, Chu Feng arrived outside the Thunder Clan's tribe. He waited outside to see how many people would come out to search for them. Only after 2 hours did the Thunder Clan feel that something was wrong. The clan elders still hadn't returned. The clan was worried and finally sent people out. After Chu Feng saw the Thunder Flood Dragon and the other 7 people, his expression became serious. He quietly chased after them. They were going to rescue the clan elders and were already beginning to worry. Did something happen? Thunder Flood Dragon, roll over here. Chu Feng appeared in the darkness, intercepting them in a mountain forest. Monster, little bastard, you actually appeared here? The Thunder Flood Dragon's eyes were cold. I'll send you on your way, Chu Feng said and decisively attacked. When the Thunder Flood Dragon attacked, he discovered that he couldn't move. His heart was filled with incomparable fear, but he couldn't change anything. He was beheaded. Soon after, the others were also beheaded. The silver bats swooped down and devoured their corpses. Chu Feng calmly left into the distance. He returned to the tribe and didn't continue to kill. In the following 2 days, the Thunder Clan was filled with fear. The loss of over a dozen experts left them terrified. Chapter 1048. Entering the Dragon's Nest. Clashing with a few young monsters and obtaining the fortune of a true dragon was a great opportunity. Of course, they might die there if they weren't careful. Chu Feng said, Sister Dongqing, we have to solve some problems for the G clan before we leave to avoid any hidden dangers after we leave. Before entering the depths of the mountain range, he had to solve the problem of this tribe. If they were massacred and conquered by a large tribe, it would be too late for regrets. He quickly told her what happened these few days. He was worried that the Thunder Clan would still be restless and even involve the large tribes in the depths of the plains. He felt that the Thunder Clan most likely had something to rely on since they dared to be so ostentatious. Dongqing nodded and said, I'll go take a look. After saying this, she soared into the sky and directly rushed out of the mountains. Her target was the large tribes in the plains. In this desolate border, even golden arhats couldn't fly. Quasi-saints were just SOSO and couldn't fly very smoothly. Hence, those who could fly in the sky were all experts. Dongqing flew all the way, causing some nearby tribes to exclaim in surprise. Chu Feng found Ji Haishan and a few elders and told them that he was going to leave with Dongqing for a period of time. He also told them that they didn't need to worry about a bloody battle between the tribes, because the problem had already been solved. That day, Dongqing returned from the plains and descended on the Thunder Clan's tribe. A trace of terrifying pressure had erupted there and shocked everyone in the Thunder Clan. Let's go. We should enter the mountains. That dragon's nest is very lively and dangerous at the same time. Dongqing prepared to take Chu Feng on his way. Before leaving, Dongqing entered the divine temple and solemnly took action, wanting to take away the only statue. With a swoosh, that statue that was exactly the same as her young miss, just that its face was blurry, shrunk continuously. In the end, it became the size of a fist and fell into her hands. She carefully placed it in a jade box. Chu Feng saw it clearly and said, "Is this still a supreme treasure? Why didn't I see it before? I really should have studied it carefully." His eyes were full of regret. Now, he even wanted to touch it with his small hand, but Dongqing directly pushed his little hand to the side. "This is the young Miss Dharma image. You really have the guts to touch it?" Dongqing smiled faintly and said, "Even if the young miss is in the deep mountains millions of miles away, she can still sense it. She'll take care of you then." "Really? Then I want to touch it even more." Chu Feng was eager to give it a try, his big eyes shining. Bang! The fist that was as big as a casserole fell on his head, almost smashing him into the ground. He immediately shut up. In reality, his heart was not calm at all. This small temple had existed for a long time and was extremely ancient, including that divine statue. As for how old was that young miss, Chu Feng only knew that she was a reincarnator and that she shouldn't be old in this life. Desolate border, endless wild ridges, dangerous mountain forests everywhere, as well as countless swamps stretching out endlessly. This was like an abandoned land. There were no signs of human habitation, nor were there any cities. What entered one's eyes was only a primitive scene. There were some regions inhabited by evil beasts that even Dongqing was afraid of, so one had to take a long detour around them. For example, there were some active volcanoes with ancient beasts hibernating within. They took in and sent out fiery light that rushed into the heavens. There was also a large black lake area in the mountains. Mist rose all over the sky and covered the sun and moon. "Sister Dongqing, has the dragon's nest been captured this time? Which families have come? How many true dragon children are there? And how many little freaks are going in to temper themselves?" Dongqing's expression was extremely serious as she said, "Not few. There should be a few young dragons. And as for the heaven-warping freaks that entered the dragon's nest to temper themselves, there should be more than a dozen." "So many?" Chu Feng was deeply surprised. He originally thought that a few orthodoxies would be enough. He never thought that there would be more than a dozen geniuses in the end. There was no need to think too much. Anyone who could enter the dragon's nest to temper themselves definitely had frighteningly good aptitude. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the qualifications at all. Their sect couldn't afford to lose face like that. "Scared?" Dongqing asked with a large grin. Nearby, the mountain terrain was precipitous. One towering mountain after another was grand and majestic. It was as if giant vicious beasts were slumbering, bringing people great pressure. At this moment, they were already close to that area. They weren't that far away. "How could I be scared?" Chu Feng patted his chest and said with a smile, "All the heroes of the world have fallen into my trap." He pretended to be heroic, but no matter how one looked at it, such a small fart was a bit comical. In addition to that, his large eyes were shining, and he gave off a somewhat sneaky feeling. Dongqing immediately laughed. Naturally, it wasn't a smile that didn't show his teeth, nor was it a soft laugh. Instead, it was a muffled sound. Soon after, it was like metal and stone colliding, shaking one's eardrums to the point of pain. "You really dare to say that? Just don't get smacked to the ground in one slap. The young miss said that your foundation establishment time is still short, and you're a bit younger than them. It's fine as long as you can survive inside. I don't ask you to defeat anyone." The teeth in Dongqing's bloody mouth were white, and he very low-key told Chu Feng that it was fine as long as he didn't die inside this time. Chu Feng was 120 unconvinced. He still wanted to knock everyone over. "Forget it. We've already understood. You shouldn't be able to defeat a single one," Dongqing said. "How preposterous!" Chu Feng stomped his foot. No matter what was said, he was still a person who successfully charged into reincarnation. After entering the Yang realm, could it be that he would lose to a group of little monsters? He then said, I want to charge in and subdue all of them, making them my little brothers and sisters. Taking advantage of the fact that they're still young, I want to establish an imposing figure in their hearts so that they can be used by me in the future. Stop dreaming and wake up. Do you think that the Sky Sovereign's own grandson and the core disciples at a clan nurtured with all their might are easy to deal with? Too naive, and you still want them to follow you? How would you make their sect feel? I reckon that they'll chase after you to kill you all over the world. Dong Qing sternly informed. Some of this group of people came out from the immortal cave. Some have been nourished by heavenly treasures for more than 2 years, and some have been nurtured since they were in their mother's womb. Each and every one of them was too heaven-defying. As for you, you've only been steamed with that rare black for 3 months. Your foundation is far from solid enough. Dong Qing made a very impressive comparison. Chu Feng was speechless. Since they clearly knew that he wasn't strong enough, did they really have to stuff him in to be abused? However, he didn't have stage fright. He really wanted to go in. Other people tempered themselves and fought over the fortunes on the surface, but he wanted to use the dragon nest as a furnace to temper himself. This wasn't the dilapidated dragon nest in the Eastern Sea on Earth. The dragon nest in this area was even more powerful. It was a super large dragon nest, and not only was there a dragon dwelling here, but there was also a heavenly dragon. One could well imagine what kind of blessed land this was. Just as Chu Feng's imagination was running wild, he was already close to his destination. In front of him, the black mountain body was like a sharp sword piercing into the sky. The mountains in this area were astonishingly steep. Looking from midair, there were wisps of mist at the waist of the mountain, and they were also pitch black. Were these the numerous mountain peaks that rose up from the abyss? The terrain is dangerous. Chu Feng sighed. He continued to fly and continuously approached. A stretch of huge black mountains appeared, and all of them stood erect like pillars that supported the sky. They were majestic and lofty, and they gave people an endless sense of oppression. We've arrived. It's just in front, Dong Qing said. Are we going to sneak in? Chu Feng asked. Dong Qing shook her head and said, No need. I'll bring the young lady's Dharma projection. When the time comes, you can just go in openly. Protect yourself. This moved Chu Feng. The Divine Temple's fairy was actually so powerful that she could participate in a battle at the level of heavenly venerables. Dong Qing very seriously warned Chu Feng that this was his first and most important test. Only by passing this test could he become the guardian of their line of descendants. Chu Feng wrinkled his nose and mumbled, You want me to be the future nanny, or do you want to force me to steal what I'm guarding? What did you say? Dong Qing's huge fist almost smashed down again, and her copper bell-like eyes were wide open. Chu Feng laughed dryly and hurriedly changed the topic, saying, Nothing, I'm talking about that child riding a dog. In the distance, a child that looked to be 2 or 3 years old was riding on a large golden dog, soaring high into the sky. That dog's aura was extraordinary. It had a square head and big ears, and its tail was raised high like a golden spear. It was very heroic and fierce. That large golden dog was at the divine king level. This moved even Dong Qing as she looked forward. This is a Tengu. Chu Feng's gaze was sharp. He stared at the large golden dog, and then looked at the child on the dog's back. Dong Qing nodded and said, Yes, it's a Tengu. This is the extreme martial lineage's descendant. If there are no accidents, he is very strong and heaven-defying, and there are high hopes placed on him. The child on the large golden dog sensed something and suddenly turned around, looking in this direction, and said, What are you looking at? Which family's descendant are you? Wash your ears. I am the great virtue, heavenly lord. Chu Feng said as soon as he opened his mouth. Killing intent surged from the depths of his heart. It really was a coincidence that he had encountered a core, outstanding talent of the extreme, martial heavenly lord's lineage. He wanted nothing more than to kill him immediately. TSK, what are you boasting for? Heavenly venerable? When we return to the dragon nest, you better keep a low profile. The child on the large golden dog pointed at him. Puppy, let's meet in the dragon nest. Chu Feng waved at him. What did you say? The core descendant of the extreme martial lineage glared angrily, his killing intent boiling. This was the first time someone dared to speak to him like this, and actually dared to blaspheme him. Puffed. Light laughter came from not far away. Two little girls with sweet appearances and identical appearances swayed there like immortals. They were a pair of twins, and they looked very small. Chu Feng turned around and returned a smile. However, he was a bit shocked inside. He sensed the aura of reincarnation, and these were definitely reincarnators. He realized that this trip to the dragon nest was not simple at all. He had actually encountered a pair of twin sisters, and they were also reincarnators. Then, his heart trembled as he remembered the past. At the end of the reincarnation road, he had once robbed a clay idol, and there he had seen a pair of twin girls with peerless beauty. He was a bit suspicious. Could it be them? Before he could think too much, more people came, and 6 or 7 children appeared all at once. Some were sitting on black cranes, and some were following their elders. They were all freaks. One of them attracted Chu Feng's attention. People from Yi Jiping's clan had arrived, and the graceful female heavenly venerable who had once been close to Linoi had personally arrived. She held the hand of a little girl who seemed to be no more than 1 or 2 years old. Chu Feng looked at her curiously. Why did this little girl's aura seem a bit like Linoi's? Could it be that she had even given birth to a child? He looked at her again and again, a dumbfounded expression on his face. Chapter 1049 was that the child Linoi gave birth to, because that kind of aura was similar, and if one looked carefully, those bright, beautiful eyes and curved black brows carried traces of familiarity. When the ruler was born, I wasn't born. When I was born, the ruler was already old. Chu Feng looked up at the sky and sighed. Then, he looked at that graceful female Empyrean. Many people tilted their heads, somewhat stunned as they looked towards Chu Feng. Then, some people revealed strange expressions. Was this child tired of living? What kind of nonsense was he spouting? What nonsense are you spouting? Dongqing berated in a low voice. Because she followed Chu Feng's gaze and looked over. He was staring at that female Empyrean and then reciting those sour words just now. At this time, many people's faces twitched slightly. They forcefully endured their own emotional fluctuations. They all knew that a group of little monsters had come today, and they couldn't be judged with common sense. However, this child was a bit too precocious, right? What was he thinking? One could see that although that beautiful female Empyrean's expression was indifferent, the corners of her eyes and the tips of her brows inadvertently twitched. Chu Feng quickly came back to his senses. This feeling was simply like being kissed by a black bear. What kind of situation was this? I'm looking at that little girl who looks like Linoi. Okay? What kind of eyes do you all have? However, even if he said it, who would believe him? After he spat out those sour words and looked in that direction, no one thought that he was looking at a little girl. They all thought that he was staring at that female Empyrean. Child, your courage is commendable. At this time, an old man riding a crow appeared, laughing heartily. In his arms was a big fat boy who was also grinning. It was clear that he was also laughing at Chu Feng. Oh my! Chu Feng felt that he was wronged to death. Didn't you see that female Empyrean? At this time, she directly revealed a murderous gaze. This old man riding a crow was too hateful. As the saying goes, if you see through it, you don't say it. How can you expose a scar right to the face? Chu Feng hated him to death. Moreover, he was even more wrong than Dou-Yi. He didn't even think about that female Empyrean. Old crow, do you want to be skinned alive? The female, wholly venerable, scolded. At the same time, her gaze swept over Chu Feng. The idol on Dongqing's body shone, and the young lady's Dharma idol rippled, protecting the area. Otherwise, Dongqing firmly believed that Chu Feng would definitely be down on his luck just now. Being swept by an Empyrean's gaze, what good end could there be? Ah, Celestial Master, I'm not targeting you. I just think that this kid is very interesting. He's very courageous and bold. The old man, who only had half of his buttocks riding on the 1-foot-long black crow, chuckled. Old man, if you bully me again, I'll beat up that fat son of yours when we get back to the dragon's lair. Chu Feng shouted. His little face was twitching slightly. If he didn't say something, he would really be cheated miserably. In the end, the crow-riding elder was petrified, even angrier than him. F***CK. The wrinkles on the old man's face trembled. He really wanted to spit out a mouthful of blood on Chu Feng's face. Did he even know how to speak? Such a big Empyrean could still have children? It was already not bad to have grandchildren. Since ancient times, there were not many Empyrean realm creatures that could still give birth to young children. After evolving to this level, it was too difficult to want to give birth again. In the distance, some people were amused. Even the E-clan's female Empyrean's lips curled up slightly. She was in a slightly better mood. Little thief, are you waiting for this old man to slap you? How dare you mock me? The crow-riding elder shouted. At the same time, the fat boy in his arms wearing a bee-skin waistcoat also reprimanded. Lecherous kid, when we enter the dragon's lair in a while, I'll feed you to the young dragon first. Chu Feng looked at the old crow and curled his lips. He didn't challenge him again. After all, that was an Empyrean. As for the fat boy, the corners of his mouth curled up. He said, White fatso, on account of your father, I won't argue with you for the time being. Let's have a good chat when we get to the dragon's lair in a while. Caw-caw. The crow, riding on the old man's buttocks, cried out from being pinched by him. He was also mentioned as the fat boy's father. It really made him feel ashamed. Don't be rude. Dong Qing spoke in a timely manner. Furthermore, her style was the same. She used her basin-sized fist to smash Chu Feng's head, suppressing him with martial force. This warrior is still sensible. Such a brat has to be beaten. If it were me, I would definitely beat him until he wails like a ghost. The crow-riding elder nodded with a smile. Chu Feng glared at him, then turned his head and said, Sister Dong Qing, this can't be tolerated. What kind of eyes does this old fellow have? Can't he see that you are a fairy from heaven? In the surroundings, the faces of a group of people turned slightly thicker. This flattery, this accusation. This child is naughty. At this time, the old woman who had been following the divine temple's fairy all along appeared. She stood beside Dong Qing and nodded at the old man riding the crow with a smile. Then, she grabbed Chu Feng's ear and pulled it repeatedly. The elder still smiled and said, It's fine. Although the little guy is a little weak, his innate talent is not bad. He is very confident. His future path should be very extraordinary. Chu Feng covered his ear and said, All right, it's all fine. Quickly let go, Grandma. Who hasn't been rebellious in their youth? Look, that fat boy opposite me is still staring at me. He's even more unruly. There's also that kid riding a dog. He's jealous of me. He's looking at me without even blinking. Chapter 1050. On the other side, the golden-furred Daitengu was shining brightly like a blazing sun. It stuck out its scarlet tongue and raised its spear-like tail. It bared its fangs at Chu Feng, and the child on its back wanted to send Chu Feng flying with a single punch. As for the big white fatty, he was also gnashing his teeth. He felt that he was already thick-skinned enough under the influence of his master. But who would have thought that the bastard on the other side would be even more shameless? He had finally met his match. When he returned to the dragon's lair, he would definitely capture him alive and make him his little brother. Woo! Since most of the people are here, we can send the children into the heavenly dragon cave. At this moment, an old Taoist spoke. There was an yin-yang diagram embroidered on his Taoist robe. It was actually slowly rotating and emitting a hazy, chaotic energy, making him seem even more mysterious. Wait a moment. Our bloodline is here, too. In the distance, large sleeves fluttered in the wind as an old man rushed over with a little girl in tow. The little girl was relatively beautiful with large eyes full of intelligence. When she smiled, there was a small dimple on the left side of her face. She happily greeted everyone, smiling sweetly and calling them senior. Little sister, over here. Chu Feng warmly invited her over. The big white fatty in the arms of the crow-riding old man curled his lips and said, "What a cheeky fellow." He was just reciting that he wasn't born yet, and now he calls a little girl his little sister. What kind of person is he? Chu Feng glanced at him and said, "Little crow, what do you know? This is my little sister, an old friend, a childhood sweetheart. Do you understand?" "Who is your little sister? Who is your childhood sweetheart?" The little girl's face was flushed red as she retorted. After seeing Chu Feng, she was quite angry. The big fatty immediately became spirited and said, "How is it? I told you, you are so thick-skinned yet you still refuse to admit it. She doesn't even know you. Go play with the dog rider." "What do you know? This is my little sister. We have a long history," Chu Feng retorted. Then, without waiting for the little girl to say anything, he hurriedly shouted at the old man, "Senior, are you feeling better?" After the old man saw him, his brows trembled and a bad feeling rose up in his heart. He then thought of the 3 kilograms and 8 taels of pill. That feeling, there was no need to mention it, especially when he thought about how he had to eat at least 99 pills. He simply wanted to vomit and felt that life was meaningless. "Not bad. Your little brat is really getting more and more cute, huh?" The old man praised him against his conscience, because he was still counting on him to continue concocting pills. Although the medicinal pill was ridiculously large, it was really effective in treating his injuries. He really needed it, so when he saw Chu Feng, he forced out a smile like an old camellia that was about to wither in the mountain wind. "Cute?" The little crow on the other side, who was the chubby boy, dug his ears to make sure he didn't hear wrongly. How could that shameless brat be considered cute? How deranged must one be to praise him like this? He had no bottom line at all. At this time, Chu Feng provoked, "Fatso, did you hear that?" At this time, not to mention the little crow, even the fierce-eyed child riding the heavenly dog from the Taiwu lineage wanted to beat him to death. On the side, the twin sisters with exquisite and flawless faces also blinked their large eyes at Chu Feng, guessing whether he was narcissistic or shameless. Beside the old man, the little girl with dimples on her face was immediately unhappy. She felt that her 9th grandpa was too unprincipled. How could he flatter him so unprincipled? How was that child cute? She really wanted to drag him over and beat him up. "Inging, you have to be more intimate with little brother," the old man said with a smile. The little girl said indignantly, "He's not even as old as me." "9th grandpa, you must have been tricked by him. Is there such a big pill? It weighs 2 kilograms. You should ruthlessly smack his butt." Nearby, some people were petrified. A big pill weighing 2 kilograms, there was a story behind it. The old man's face immediately twitched, but it was useless to say anything else. The medicinal effects of that pill were absolutely correct. It was genuine. Chu Feng interrupted, "Sister, we're on the same side. Watch your words and actions. After we enter the dragon's lair, you have to protect me, or else no one will be able to refine 9th grandpa's medicinal pills." This thick-skinned fellow, he hadn't even entered yet, and he was already asking his sister to protect him. Was he still a man? The little crow on the other side raised a finger at him, expressing his disdain. "Who are you? I don't even know what your name is." The little girl, Inging, glared at him. For the sake of her grandfather, she would pinch her nose and admit it. After entering the dragon's lair, she would reluctantly pull him along. "I know you're called Inging. I'm called Virtuous Heavenly Lord." Chu Feng's face was full of smiles. This time, in front of the Empyrean, he didn't dare call himself Virtuous Heavenly Lord and was very humble. "Virtuous? You're lacking in the 5 elements." The little crow provoked. "Extremely lacking in virtue." The eyes of the child riding the heavenly dog became increasingly cold, the light radiating from his body intimidating. He had already been shot several times while lying down, and this time he couldn't help but mock Chu Feng. The little girl Inging giggled and said, "My surname is Ji, and my name is as they say." "And I know." Chu Feng hurriedly said, "All of you shut up. Don't ruin my reputation. I'm a brilliant and resplendent figure with a divine ring on my body. I'm a heroic, virtuous person of a generation. However, the dozen or so little monsters present were all whispering among themselves with smiles on their faces. It seemed like this unlucky name wouldn't be able to escape from today onwards. All right, prepare to enter the dragon's lair. The old Taoist spoke. The yin-yang diagram embroidered on his body rotated, and wind and thunder erupted. Yang energy surged, and the majestic mountain in front of them began to move. The black peaks that pierced into the heavens split apart one after another, revealing the dragon's lair in front of them. During this process, Ying-Ying's grandpa Gio took out a keepsake. He had relied on this to bring the little girl here to obtain the qualifications to enter the dragon's lair. In front of them, there was a pitch-black main peak that exuded a terrifying pressure. It was incomparably vast, thicker and taller than many of the other mountain peaks added together. This was a giant peak that pierced through the heavens. There was a dragon's lair halfway up the mountain. It was built with all kinds of lightning-struck wood and built between the precipitous cliffs. At the same time, it also extended into the belly of the mountain. There was a large hole behind the cliff, and it was unknown how deep it was. There were many lightning-struck wood, and if one didn't look closely, it would look like a bird's nest. This was the Yang Realm's dragon's lair? Chu Feng watched in astonishment. He had already heard from Dong Qing that several great sects, celestial venerable level ancestors, had come recently. They personally took action to conquer this place and capture a few mature dragons. The most important thing was that several old monsters had also captured the slumbering heavenly dragon alive and brought it away from this place. In the Yang realm, the so-called heavenly dragon was a dragon at the celestial venerable realm. Its strength was terrifyingly shocking, and it far surpassed evolvers of other races in the same realm. However, it was still captured. All right, the outstanding talents of each sect, the future celestial venerables and almighty figures, you should all go and temper yourselves, said the old Taoist. His status was very high. At the same time, he sent a fair, tender, and delicate little Taoist beside him into the dragon's lair on the cliff. For a moment, lights circulated, and everyone took action, sending over a dozen children over. Those who could come here were either celestial venerables or had celestial venerables behind them. They had already met in private and reached a consensus. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the qualifications to appear here. Such people generally wouldn't easily start a war, or the consequences would be huge. Before Chu Feng entered the dragon's lair, he was a little distracted. He couldn't help but turn back to look at the E-clan's female, celestial venerable. She was holding the hand of the little girl who looked a little like Linoy, and in the end, she was also sent on her way. Where are you looking? Behave yourself. Dong Qing angrily hammered his head again. His style was rather rough. You've really wronged me. Chu Feng was indignant. The others were speechless. This little thief was really bold. Didn't he see that the female celestial venerable's face was already slightly dark? How dare he look again? So people were secretly laughing. After entering the dragon's lair, there was a faint pressure in the aura of the dragon clan. The dozen or so little monsters looked at each other. As their gazes intertwined, the little crow and the dog immediately stared at Chu Feng. Chu Feng looked at the little girl who had traces of Linoy and said, "Follow me in a while. Uncle will guarantee your safety." This shameless fellow, the little crow, who was also that fat white boy, immediately despised him again. This fellow was really thick-skinned. Did he love the house and its crow? Sure enough, in the distance, the female celestial venerable's face darkened. In the dragon's lair, the little monster Ying with the dimples on her face was indignant. Earlier, Chu Feng had asked her to protect him, but in the blink of an eye, he wanted to protect someone else. This was unbearable. She really wanted to beat him up. Chu Feng smiled and greeted some people, hoping to form an alliance. However, the little monster of the great martial lord's bloodline stared at him and said to the crowd, "Everyone, there are a lot of people here. Let's get rid of Ji Queed first." Chu Feng sneered and said, "Who do you think you are? Ordering people around and dealing with whoever you want." The dog ignored him with a faint smile on his face. Chu Feng soon discovered that something was wrong. There were 6 or 7 little monsters standing beside the dog, and it seemed that they all knew each other. Kill! A group of people rushed over and attacked Chu Feng at the same time. Ying, attack! Chu Feng called out to his allies. Go and dig in the mud. Ying turned and ran away, joining the other party's camp because a few little monsters were waving at her. Obviously, they knew each other. A group of aristocratic children, all acquaintances. Chu Feng jumped up and ran. Then he shouted at Ying. As the saying goes, women are reliable, and pigs can climb trees. Sure enough, he was expressing his dissatisfaction. Bah, that's for men, Ying retorted. Chapter 10:51. Just like that, Chu Feng charged in. Within the darkness, a row of eyes lit up uniformly. There were 6 or 7 pairs of golden pupils, long and narrow. They were intense and piercing, carrying with them an astonishing killing intent. They were incomparably hostile towards the outsider. In truth, one could imagine why this was the case. The entire dragon nest was inhabited by a tribe, and now the adult dragons had been captured. Some had even been skinned and had been cruelly slaughtered. How could the remaining descendants not hate the outsider? Even the young dragons were facing a life and death crisis. They had to accompany a group of little monsters in battle to sharpen them. Outside, some experts were chatting cheerfully, discussing how to use the dragon nest to cultivate the strongest descendant. This was actually a bloody and undisguised law of the jungle. Roar! The moment Chu Feng charged in, a dragon's roar exploded. A 2-meter-long dragon pounced like a bolt of black lightning with extreme speed. An evil wind blew in his face. The long and narrow golden eyes carried a bone-piercing chill and boundless killing intent. As it neared Chu Feng, his body instantly tensed up. This dragon nest was far more dangerous than he had imagined. He immediately understood upon contact that the young dragons were very strong. According to Dong Qing's previous description, this one was at least 2 years old. His body was very flexible, so he slightly sidestepped to avoid this attack. However, he used one hand to brush against the other to feel the strength of the attack. The icy scales pierced his palm until it was dripping with blood. It was extremely painful, especially when a great force came through. It caused his arm to tremble, and he quickly moved to the side. As expected of the dragon race, Chu Feng's heart trembled. In the end, the time he had spent tempering himself was too short. The Dao fruit from his previous life had been taken away and could not be used. In this life, he had only been tempered for 3 months. With such a short time, an infant who had cultivated for a few months was far from enough even for a reincarnator. Chu Feng trembled with fear. He knew that he couldn't clash head-on after coming to this place. He should search for fortunes and raise his constitution first. Dong Qing's warning earlier wasn't without reason. He might die here if he wasn't careful. Roar! In reality, his crisis had only just begun. Behind him, there were still 6 or 7 dragons. They were not very large, but they were very fierce. They swung their tails and rushed over to attack Chu Feng. Whoosh! Chu Feng leaped up and stepped on a lightning-struck tree. His body flew backwards and avoided the attack. If he was really surrounded by this group of dragons, he would definitely be torn to shreds. The situation was not good. In front of him was a young dragon with boundless murderous intent, and behind him was his pursuer. In the end, Chu Feng still chose to retreat. He had to let the unwelcome guests in front and behind him meet, and it would be best if a chaotic battle broke out. As for Brother Dragon, Sister Dragon, and Sister Dragon, it was useless. As soon as they saw that he was an outsider in human form, the young dragon's eyes turned red. Jikeda Dai, the extreme martial lineage's evildoer, shouted. He was the oldest among the group of children, and his strength was astonishing. He sent a palm towards Chu Feng, and between his palm and fingers, there were arcs of electricity and a black whirlwind. Whoosh! Chu Feng leaped up and stuck to the stone wall above the dragon nest like a gecko. He quickly moved about at an inconceivable speed and avoided this fatal blow. At the critical moment, he discovered the mysteries of this place. The whole dragon nest had magnetic stones and a part of the natural domain. He rushed over and moved with the help of the origin magnetic chi. For a moment, his whole body was tense and cold. He really had to fight with his life on the line. He had just entered the dragon cave and already encountered danger several times. An angry roar was heard. The children who followed Puppy and encountered the young dragons, and a bloody battle broke out. Where do you think you're going? The little evildoer of the extreme martial lineage, Puppy, was very cold. He leaped up and climbed the cave wall to chase after Chu Feng, eager to kill him. Puppy, I'll go find some dragon blood grass to eat first. When my constitution is up, I won't kill you, Chu Feng shouted. There were many geomagnetic forces between the stone walls. The natural domain was intermittent, which was enough for him to escape. He used the origin magnetic chi to become a beam of flowing light and quickly went far away. However, he didn't have enough strength to kill people. At this moment, a scream was heard. It was a child after all. Below, a child's abdomen was torn by a dragon's claw. In an instant, his intestines flowed out. It was a bloody scene. Everyone attacked together as soon as possible. This isn't child's play. Don't cause internal strife. There are too many descendants of the dragon race here. Look, a few more are coming. Big White shouted. He was very anxious. Apart from the 6 or 7 dragons from before, in the darkness, a few more silvery white eyes opened, rushing over from the distance at top speed. Attack! The dozen or so children were anxious. It wasn't appropriate to fight among themselves now. The situation was worse than they had imagined. They could die at any moment and be killed by the young dragons. In this world, once they evolved into dragons or immortal birds, such creatures were extremely terrifying. Their bloodlines were boundlessly powerful, and their young were astonishingly talented. They could fight as soon as they were born. Not to mention that there used to be an old sky dragon here. Even a single celestial venerable might be slaughtered if he came here. How could its descendants be weak? Dragons were the best among the countless species. Their combat strength was valiant and frightening. In a duel of the same level, under normal circumstances, they would crush their opponents easily. For a moment, the dozen or so children were fighting against the dozen or so dragons. Previously, everyone had great ambitions when they came in. They wanted to hunt dragons here and add a glorious accomplishment to their achievements. From then on, they would walk on the golden path of evolution. But now they had calmed down. Some of them had their intestines spilling out and were on the verge of death. Chu Feng watched from afar and wiped off his cold sweat. He sighed inwardly that Dong Qing was right. Under normal circumstances, he would have died very quickly if he had come in. If not for the domains, he would have died at least 2 times just now. A haze appeared in his heart. Although the Divine Temple's fairy lineage was willing to invest in him and gave him rare ores, their tests were too harsh. This was simply sending him to his death. Dong Qing's warning wasn't exaggerated at all. It could even be said that he had spoken lightly. The real dragon nest was even more bloody and shocking than he had previously imagined. Are you guys raising insects? Chu Feng's heart was heavy. At this time, he was quite far away from the battlefield. He opened his fiery eyes and observed carefully. It was too dark earlier, so he could only see vague shadows when he encountered the dragons. His heart was shaken. These dragons were different from what he had imagined. There were 6 black dragons, each one of them ranging from 1 to 2.5 meters long. All of them were quite ferocious. The 7 white dragons were more or less the same. The only difference was that the scales on their bodies were snow white like sheep fat. However, they were flickering with a cold radiance. There were a total of 13 dragons. Their bodies were somewhat fat, even bloated, and they all had wings. The colors were the same as the color of their scales, either pure black or pure white. These are Western dragons. Chu Feng was lost in thought. They were similar to the Western dragons he had seen on Earth. However, they were far more powerful and possessed terrifying divine power. The Western dragons he had seen in the past were more like large winged lizards. However, these ones were different. They indeed had dragon heads, but their bodies were like crocodiles with dragon wings on their backs. This is a different type of dragon on the path of evolution. Since they're called dragons, they are naturally extraordinary. They are definitely one of the races at the top of the food chain. Chu Feng was convinced that these dragons were not weak. Otherwise, how could they have been chosen by the Celestial Venerable as a training ground for the core descendants? Under normal circumstances, the disciples of the Celestial Venerable were undefeatable. They had no opponents at the same level and couldn't find a suitable opponent to practice on. But now, this dragon's lair was just right. Kill. The dozen or so children were locked in battle with the 13 dragons. It was very intense, and not long after, they were stained with blood. Whoosh! Chu Feng left this place and marched into the depths of the dragon's lair. It was rare for him to escape the strangulation. Now, he wanted to search for fortunes. There were too many good things in the dragon's lair. This wasn't the abandoned dragon's lair on Earth, which had been looted clean in ancient times. This was the Yang realm, and the dragon race had always inhabited it. There were bound to be amazing, divine treasures. He rushed all the way into the belly of the mountain. The dragon's lair was simply too big. The deeper he went, the more suspicious he became. Could it be that this place had formed its own spatial world? Otherwise, why hadn't he reached the end after walking for a long time? Along the way, he saw some small trees that were as red as blood. They bore fruits that were bright red and glistening, and the fragrance of the fruits was extremely alluring. The legendary dragon blood grass has evolved into a dragon blood tree. Chu Feng's eyes were wide open. However, he had no way to consume mutant fruits and couldn't use them to evolve. In this Yang realm, the research on evolution had reached its limit. No child could come into contact with pollen and fruits too early, and they couldn't use catalysis to evolve. They had to wait until they were 16 years old. Some ancient aristocratic families that were overly particular even requested that they wait until they were 18 years old. The reasoning and reason behind this were very astonishing. I really want to eat them all. Chu Feng was drooling. Those small trees were less than a meter tall, and their fruits were the size of an infant's fist. They were bright red and resplendent. Kill! Battle cries came from behind, accompanied by dragon roars. Some of the children had broken through and were charging in. This so-called tempering was not only about killing, but also about seeking fortunes. It was to let a group of little monsters experience all kinds of real and cruel battles. Many benefits were left here. After the Celestial Venerables joined forces to defeat the old Heaven Dragon, they didn't take away some of the corresponding fortunes. Chu Feng's expression changed. He didn't stay here any longer. He ignored the dragon blood trees and directly rushed into the depths of the cave. Some fortunes could be enjoyed by children of his age, so he had to make good use of them. Suddenly, Chu Feng caught a whiff of a special fragrance that made all the pores on his body open up. He stepped on the origin magnetic chi, and the magnetic light surged as it propelled him forward rapidly. He was a little surprised. The dragon race had chosen their sites and built their nests on special terrains. They could borrow the origin magnetic force, which was a good thing for him. I found it. What's that? He saw a small puddle that was a square foot in size, but there was only a drop of white liquid in it. The fragrance was coming from it. Soon, he noticed that there were many dragon claw marks on the side of the dried puddle. Many young dragons would come here on normal days. True dragon elixir? Chu Feng trembled. In the true dragon nest, this thing was called true dragon elixir. According to legend, adult dragons gathered the essence of all things in the world, smelted it in the earth veins, and brewed it into liquid. It was called true dragon elixir. At the same time, this thing was also interpreted as the milk of true dragons. Although it wasn't, the effects were similar. This was the precious liquid used by true dragons to nurture young dragons. Its value was immeasurable. It was said that once one consumed this true dragon elixir, their internal organs would glow and be nourished. Even their bone marrow could be replaced, and their physique would be greatly improved. Why were young dragons so strong? It was because they had eaten this true dragon elixir that their bodies were tough and invulnerable. It was so terrifying that it could scare people to death. Chu Feng's eyes immediately turned red. Although this place was a Western-style dragon, it was still a branch of the dragon race on the path of evolution. Naturally, the elixir brood had similar effects. This bunch of dragon whelps must have eaten and drunk their fill long ago, but they drank it all decisively when they knew that outsiders had come. He let out a long sigh. Something's not right. Suddenly, he recalled the rumors. This kind of dragon elixir was brewed after adult dragons gathered the essence of all things in the world and buried it in the earth veins. It would only come out when it was ripe. Although it's dried up, I think there might be some underground. Chapter 1052. Chu Feng dived in and, as expected, smelled the fragrance spreading from the cracks in the ground. The so-called true dragon elixir source was indeed deep underground. Along the way, he constantly used his domain methods to restore the rocks and soil behind him to their original position, erasing the traces of him drilling into the ground. Chu Feng was really afraid that someone or dragon would cut off his path of retreat and give him a ruthless blow. It was better to search for the source of this great fortune alone. The fragrance grew stronger along the way, and in the end, he was almost drunk. It was just as the rumors said. There was an ancient pond underground that was emitting white light and condensing into liquid. When this liquid accumulated to a certain point, it would gush out and appear on the surface. Chu Feng was incomparably excited. This was the first time he had found a rare heavenly treasure after coming to the Yang realm. It could nourish his body and temper his internal organs to an unbreakable state. The physical body of a true dragon was so strong that it could kill tens of thousands of races and sweep through everything before it. This had a lot to do with the true dragon elixir and the tempering of its internal organs and bones. Now, if Chu Feng were to eat such a rare treasure, even if it could only last for a short period of time, it would still be shocking and his physical body would become incomparably powerful. Such a big pond, it's really not little. Chu Feng was drooling as he looked. This was underground and connected to an underground ancestral vein. It condensed the essence of the mountains and rivers, nurturing a pond of the essence of all living things. This pond was 3 square meters in area. White light flickered inside, and auspicious qi gushed out. It was so fragrant that one would feel as if they were about to ascend to heaven with a single breath. Their entire bodies were light and comfortable. The liquid in the pond was silvery white and sparkling like chalcedony. It was precisely this liquid that emitted an indissoluble fragrance. Just the stock here alone can probably allow me to drink a small bowl every day for over half a year. Chu Feng was excited. In that case, just the fortune here was enough for him to refine his body without counting the rare minerals cooked by Holly. It would allow him to achieve a body as powerful as a true dragon at a young age. In the future, he would be able to give his opponents a headache if he fought purely with his physical body. A dragon's body could kill trillions of creatures in the heavens. Aside from a portion of the true dragon liquid, there were also some substances that gave off a piercing light. At the same time, there were many substances that resembled wine grains that floated in the liquid. This is true dragon elixir. Chu Feng was moved. He already knew what this was. Its value was immeasurable. When the adult dragon race went out, they would gather the essence of all living things in the world and bury it in the veins of the earth, creating a world-shocking precious liquid. These substances were precisely the essence of all living things. Now that they were dissolved here, it wasn't that their value was low, but that they were even more precious. Just like the distiller's yeast, it had a huge impact on the quality of the wine. As the saying goes, 1,000-year cellar makes 10,000 years of waste. The quality of the wine depends entirely on the age of the cellar. It was the same for the true dragon liquid. The more natural treasures accumulated in the pool, the more ancient they were, and the better the effect of the liquid fermented by the earth veins. Some of the dragon race lived in the same place for generations. After generations of inheritance, Their dragon pool had accumulated an unknown amount of mushy substances, which had become the world's treasures. In this kind of true dragon liquid pool, even if the dragons of later generations collected some of the world's essence and placed it in the earth veins, they would be able to obtain excellent quality true dragon liquid after fermentation with the old distiller's yeast from the past. This place was a large dragon nest, and there were 13 young dragons in the last 2 years. One could imagine how powerful this race was. There were so many of them that it was unknown how many generations they had reproduced. There was even an extremely ancient heavenly dragon here. One could imagine how old this true dragon liquid pool was. It was a truly priceless old pool. It would be great if I could move it away. In the future, I can throw some mutant fruits and divine herbs into the pool when I have nothing to do. Wouldn't I be able to drink dragon milk every day and hone my body into an invincible one? Chu Feng muttered to himself. His face was full of emotion and his heart was full of excitement. Unfortunately, he knew that it was very difficult to realize. Even if he really moved it away after leaving the dragon race, this kind of pool was equivalent to being useless, and it would be difficult to produce true dragon liquid again. Throughout the ages, there had been many experts in the Yang realm. It wasn't that there weren't any heavenly venerables taking action. There were even powerhouses who went to the dragon nest to find the dragon pool and brew true dragon liquid themselves to nurture their descendants. But after obtaining the dragon nest, they all failed when brewing true dragon liquid, and there were very few successful cases in history. Moreover, the dragon race was very unyielding. There were successful ones who wanted to rear them, but without exception, when they were made to brew the precious liquid, once they lost the tyranny of the true dragon, they could no longer brew this kind of supreme precious liquid. Throughout the ages, only one orthodoxy had succeeded. That was the damning Pure Land. No one knew what methods they used, but during their strongest years, they obtained a dragon nest that could actually brew precious liquid. This also led to them being incomparably powerful during that period of time. Their aura swallowed the world, and thus they were full of ambition. They set their sights on the other top 10 orthodoxies' ultimate breathing techniques. Unfortunately, they were destroyed in the end, and the damning Pure Land became the smoke of history. Throughout the ages, only the damning Pure Land had succeeded. For the other races, even if the powerhouses personally took action, it was useless because they couldn't brew true dragon liquid. I reckon it's also because of this that the heavenly venerables didn't go deep underground to investigate, nor did they take away the dragon pool. Chu Feng guessed himself, but he was still a little unwilling to give up. How could the damning Pure Land succeed? It doesn't matter. I'll move it back and store it in a stone jar. Once this kind of thing left the dragon nest, it would go bad. The sediments in the dragon pool and the mushy dregs would disintegrate and be corroded by the mortal world. They needed an ultimate artifact to suppress it. Chu Feng believed that there was no problem with the stone jar he had on him. I'll put away in a while. Maybe I'll find some clues when I walk around the ruins of the damning Pure Land in the Yang realm. Chu Feng happily drank a mouthful of true dragon liquid at the side of the pool. White light rose and baptized his corporeal body. He felt as if a ball of fire was burning all over his body. For a moment, his 5 viscera were shaken at the same time. Light surged and rushed out of his body. The strengthening of his 5 viscera affected every part of his body, and the activity of his cells increased sharply. It's really immediate. My constitution is improving and becoming stronger. One could imagine how astonishing the benefits would be for the body if the young dragon drank this thing every day during its lactation period. Chu Feng felt that if he couldn't brew it himself, he would find another dragon nest and strive to have dragon milk to drink throughout his childhood. There's another universe. He discovered an abnormality. A crack in the stone connected to the dragon pond was emitting wisps of radiance. It was even more intense, and when he sniffed it carefully, the fragrance was even more alluring. He carefully moved the stone away and saw another pond. The white light was dazzling and incomparably divine. This was a small pond with a square area of 3 feet. However, it was even more intense, resplendent, and holy than the dragon pond, with a square area of 3 feet. The rich fragrance was intoxicating, and it seemed as if one could live for 100 more years just by smelling it. Chu Feng came back to his senses after a long time. He noticed that the sediment in the small pond was even more astonishing. There was liquid flowing out from it and flocculent objects sliding down from time to time. The sediment and precious liquid in the dragon pond, with a square area of 3 feet, were caused by this small pond. Chu Feng was shocked. He observed carefully and was convinced that this was the case. After the dragon race gathered the essence of all things in the world, they first placed it in the small pond and let it ferment into the precious liquid. After that place overflowed, it flowed into the large pond and thus created a second dragon pond. This is a true treasure. Chu Feng studied the small pond for a long time and was convinced that this thing was terrifyingly ancient. In the end, he dug out the small pond. The small pond was made of a special stone material. It was dusty and had been excavated into a pond by an ancient dragon of an unknown era. The walls of the pond were extremely hard and sturdy, almost comparable to mother gold. Chu Feng dug out the whole thing and carried it as if he had dug out an irregularly shaped stone basin. He quickly put the whole thing into a jade spatial bottle and then put the bottle into the stone jar. Normally speaking, it was difficult to put spatial items into other spatial items, but the stone jar couldn't be judged with common sense. There were no restrictions. It's enough to take away the small pond. When the time comes, I must go to the Damung Pure Land ruins and strive to dig out the secret of their ability to brew dragon milk. As for that square area of 3 feet, Chu Feng only took away the true dragon liquid. He cleaned it all up, but didn't move it away as a whole. He felt that if the celestial venerables came down to dig the pond and found it missing, it might cause all kinds of trouble. It was more appropriate to leave some for them. Next, Chu Feng ran away and changed a place. He hid in the depths of the cave and began to swallow the true dragon liquid in large mouthfuls. On this day, he opened his belly and consumed a full 1/6 of the true dragon liquid. It was really like a whale drinking water, and his body was so full that it was about to explode. Such extravagant squandering was mainly because he felt too insecure in the dragon's nest and wasn't strong enough. He hoped to use the true dragon liquid to refine a precious body in a short time. You guys were either raised in the immortal cave or have eaten the great creation of heaven and earth. This old man can become stronger by relying on himself. Chu Feng mumbled. He really wanted to kill Gua and behead the Taiwu descendant to vent his anger. After eating a 1/6 of the true dragon liquid, his whole body shone and finally formed a cocoon outside his body. He was temporarily drowsy and fell into a deep sleep. In the end, the cocoon became smooth, warm, and sparkling. It became an eggshell-like substance, like a dragon egg. Chapter 10:53. The cocoon was smooth and sparkling like a snow-white eggshell. There was nothing unusual about it, especially in a dragon's nest. Once discovered, it would be impossible not to mistake it for a dragon egg. Chu Feng was unconscious for a day and a night. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a sealed space. He was immediately startled. Who had imprisoned him? But when he stretched his limbs, he felt a powerful force within his body despite the cramped space. His constitution had been greatly improved. At first, he had to start from scratch again. He had only cultivated for a few months, and even a reincarnator shouldn't be that heaven-defying. But now, he felt that he had already broken through the awakened and shackled levels. If he really had to fight, it would be easy to break through the shackled level. At the same time, this so-called improvement in his constitution wasn't a true evolution. Chu Feng sensed it carefully. Everything stemmed from the increased activity of his cells, releasing part of the power within his body's treasury. This time, he didn't experience the so-called awakening or shackling. Instead, he only unlocked the potential of his body. All his cells flowed with a mysterious essence, causing his strength to increase greatly. He had yet to awaken and break the shackles of the human race. but he already possessed such an ability. This caused Chu Feng to become lost in thought. No wonder some of the immortal Dao sects and aristocratic families that had existed for hundreds of millions of years had strict requirements for their descendants to not use catalysts to evolve before the age of 16. That makes sense. I've already experienced a part of the benefits. Chu Feng pondered over his own situation and confirmed it. Awakening, breaking the shackles, painting the human body, visualizing the heavens, and reconstructing one's body. These corresponding realms weren't worth paying attention to at the moment. At present, he only needed to improve himself. There was no need to deliberately figure out those realms. Was this the effect of drinking the true dragon elixir? Chu Feng's heart was burning with passion. The rapid improvement in his constitution and the increased activity of his cells had actually increased his strength by so much. At the same time, he sighed softly. Aristocratic families that had existed for hundreds of millions of years had chosen their children to be raised in immortal caves. There were also some sealed in the eye of the fortune spring. One could imagine the effects. The dozen or so monsters outside had probably been raised this way. The Yang realm was too big, and there were too many places of fortune. However, Chu Feng frowned slightly. I don't know if this is good or bad. That was because there was a safer path in the evolutionary world with a different point of view. That was to leave them alone before the age of 16. There was no need to nurture them, so as to avoid premature growth and exhausting their potential. That meant that they would only start training after the age of 16. What I'm using isn't a stimulant. This dragon milk is brewed from a rare treasure of heaven and earth. It's the juice used to nurture young dragons. There shouldn't be any side effects. Chu Feng had some guesses. He felt that it wasn't something that could be released early. He was also thinking about this. Even the great figures that had been dormant for thousands of years had come out to conquer the dragon nest. They wanted to brew true dragon elixir, so it was likely that this thing had no side effects. The effects were even more astonishing than he had imagined. So much so that he even guessed that the destruction of the damning pure land in the Yang realm wasn't necessarily because they coveted the breathing technique of another race in the top 10. It was very likely that it was because they grasped the brewing technique of the true dragon elixir. They were excessively heaven-defying and aroused the jealousy of others, so they were eliminated. Chu Feng quickly came back to his senses. He activated his eyes of fire and gold and observed the situation outside the sealed space. In the blink of an eye, he came to realize that he had actually formed a cocoon. He had turned into an egg and sealed himself within. This is true dragon elixir. If I drink it every day, the effects will be much better than before. Chu Feng felt that he couldn't waste it anymore. He had to use it where it was most useful. Now, he should be able to protect himself in the dragon nest. Rumble. He rolled on the ground and wasn't in a hurry to break free from the eggshell. Along the way, he exerted all his strength and broke open a piece of eggshell with a bang. He stretched out a hand to dig a path and, at the same time, used his domain techniques to erase the traces behind. Chu Feng returned to the surface. One day and one night had passed, and he had no idea what was going on outside. Crack! In the end, he restored the eggshell to its original state and plugged up the gap. He then used some of his domain techniques to deal with the terrain to repair it. The eggshell was as smooth as jade with no cracks at all. The dragon nest was very large and occupied a large area. Chu Feng opened his eyes of fire and gold and observed the scenery outside from within the eggshell. His heart trembled. The ground was stained with blood and fragments of dragon scale. Doubtlessly, an intense battle had taken place here, and both sides had suffered injuries. I wonder if anyone died, guessed Chu Feng. Before entering the dragon nest, everyone's great weapons had been taken away. Not a single one was left behind. Those old fellows weren't afraid of them dying at all. They didn't even leave behind a death substitute talisman. Naturally, the jade tablet Dongqing had given to Chu Feng was no longer on him. The dragon cave was very quiet. Chu Feng listened attentively. After a long while, a miserable cry came from the depths of the dragon nest, followed by the sounds of an intense battle. Before long, there was silence once again. They're all hiding and hunting in the dark. Chu Feng became increasingly cautious. It would be too unjust if he were to capsize here and be killed in the dragon nest. Next, I'll look for some opportunities. Then, I'll use this dragon nest to undergo rebirth. Chu Feng's eyes were clear. To him, this was an immortal cave that could allow his strength to continue increasing. Profound magnetic chi surged and carried the egg forward rapidly, rushing all the way into the depths of the dragon nest. Chu Feng paid attention to the movements in the surroundings, searching for a place of rebirth in the heavenly dragon nest. After arriving in the depths, it was somewhat dark. Suddenly, a miserable cry rang out again, and something was flying in his direction. Chu Feng immediately stopped and hid among the lightning-struck wood and piles of rubble. This part of the mountain was very large, and the terrain was very complicated. Bang! A human head fell. The face was still very young, and the state of his death was very tragic. His expression was sinister. A little monster had died here. Chu Feng's heart went cold. The celestial venerables outside didn't care. This was really letting them kill as they pleased. Death was death. It was too cruel to nurture the so-called strongest descendant. He recalled Dongqing's words. When each race was nurturing the strongest of a certain era, there would be a few seeded contestants in their own race. The competition was very cruel. Now that one had died, there were still a few more in the race waiting to be promoted. As expected, they didn't care about human life. This was a little monster that they had spent all kinds of fortunes to nurture, but they didn't even save him. A 2-meter-long silver dragon appeared in the darkness. It flapped its dragon wings and looked down. Then, it turned into a bolt of white lightning and disappeared. Chu Feng became more and more cautious. He hid among the rubble for a long time before moving. If it wasn't necessary, he didn't want to fight with a bunch of little lunatics right now. It was best if he could make a fortune. He wanted to obtain the few great fortunes here first. Roar! In the distance, the sounds of an intense battle could be heard. Dragon cries surged, and angry roars rose and fell. This surprised Chu Feng. He stealthily approached that area. After a while, 2 black dragons and 3 white dragons fled, disappearing into the end of the dragon nest like 5 bolts of lightning. In the original place, Gua, the little crow, Ying, and the other 3 little monsters were panting and resting. In addition, there was also a black dragon that had died on the spot. There had been a chaotic battle here just now. Before long, flames flickered. They lit the thunderstruck wood, skinned the black dragon, and roasted it. An alluring fragrance wafted out. Chu Feng stared blankly. This was dragon meat, which even he had never eaten before. Yet, these little brats actually began to gorge themselves and enjoy a feast of dragon meat. At the same time, he also sighed. None of them were good people. Even that girl, Ying's skirt, was stained with blood as she participated in the dragon slaying. Delicious, the taste is really great. I've never eaten such delicacies. The fat white boy, who was also a little crow, exclaimed as he ate. Strange, where did Ji Kui go? Why can't we find him? The extreme martial heavenly lord's monster muttered to himself. He was very vengeful. Being called Gua made his killing intense. He had always wanted to find the other party and kill him directly. As a core descendant of the extreme martial heavenly lord's lineage, he didn't need to think about how to deal with the aftermath. The little girl, Ying, said, let's just let him go. We can't even take care of ourselves now. These dragons are very cunning and savage. 3 people have already been torn to pieces. This is their home field. If we are distracted and careless, we will die tragically. In the end, she was still protecting Chu Feng. Her grandpa Jiu still needed him to refine pills. The little crow also advised, forget it, we can't cause unnecessary trouble. Although that shameless grandson's strength isn't that great, his escaping ability is first-rate. If he leads the group of dragons and attacks us, something might happen. He also opposed, I really want to kill him. In my eyes, this little evil creature is even more despicable than the Yin spirits. Ever since I saw him, I felt that he was a disaster. Sooner or later, We will have a battle to the death." The extreme martial heavenly lord's little monster's eyes were cold as he spoke. In the dark, Chu Feng heard everything clearly. He immediately felt great hatred. Back then, when the extreme martial heavenly lord was wreaking havoc in the netherworld and massacred everywhere, he had once said that all Yin spirits should die. The main reason was that the extreme martial heavenly lord's young Taoist companion died in the hands of the Yin spirits, so he began to hate and kill on sight. Now, Puppy compared Chu Feng with the Yin spirits and thought that he should be killed. This naturally aroused the anger and killing intent that were originally hidden in his heart. "There's a situation." In an instant, Puppy stood up and looked in the direction of Chu Feng with his rainbow-like eyes. He was the oldest among this group of children, about 2 or 3 years old, so his senses were the strongest. With a swoosh, several little monsters surrounded him. "A dragon egg, it's really good luck. It's more nutritious than dragon meat." The little crow cried, drooling. "Don't move." Puppy stopped him. Then, his eyes were burning with desire. It would be a pity to eat this thing. If he cultivated it with his heart, he could raise a sky dragon that was completely obedient to him. In the future, it would not be weaker than him, or even stronger than him. The dragon clan was too unyielding. Even if they were subdued, they had to be restrained. Otherwise, no one dared to raise them. Only a dragon egg could hatch into a truly obedient dragon. Swoosh! Puppy rushed over, knocked on the egg, and said, "I feel that there's a living being inside. Although its strength is not high, its vitality is very strong. This is a rare good luck. We'll take it with us later. When we leave the dragon lair, we'll hand it over to the elders and let them discuss who to give it to. I think the one who makes the greatest contribution will be rewarded in the end. Don't fight for it now." The few little monsters compromised and spoke like this. Then they stepped forward together, picked up the egg, and prepared to go. Chapter 1054. At the same time, Chu Feng sensed 6 streams of blood seeping into the cocoon and entering its interior. He was speechless. These were all little monsters, and none of them were easy to deal with. All of them wanted to leave behind their blood essence in the egg. Suddenly, the extreme martial lineage's little freak said, "Perhaps we still have another choice. We can use this egg to deceive that little girl from the Yi clan and have her open the Nirvana domain to let us in." Someone nodded and said with dissatisfaction, "That's right. Let's try and see if we can deceive her. It's really unfair. Why can she bring in an entire set of divine magnetic domain cornerstones and monopolize the land of Nirvana, while we can't even bring in a suitable weapon?" Within the dragon egg, Chu Feng's heart was in turmoil after hearing this. The land of Nirvana, he wanted to have been taken by someone else. The little crow sighed. Let it be. The Yi clan was the first to discover the dragon lair, so the fortunes here should belong to them. Although our patriarch participated, he had to give them some face. That fortune was tacitly given to the Yi clan. Let's go, I'm still not satisfied. Let's try. Before long, they brought the dragon egg to the most important area of the dragon lair. This place was spacious and dreamy. There were floating islands with silver waterfalls pouring down from them. Additionally, there were ancient trees growing in all directions, some of which could even support the islands. Among them, there was an area with many dragon horns left behind by the old dragons. They formed a special shack suspended in the air. That was the land of fortune within the dragon lair. After death, dragons would generally transform into the Tao and dissolve their flesh and blood to prevent other races from devouring their blood essence and refining their true bones. That was because the dragon race's entire body was a treasure to other races. Throughout the ages, only a portion of the dragon horns could be left behind. Naturally, they were all damaged beyond recognition after transforming into the Tao. These dragon horns had been arranged by the dragons themselves to become their healing and seclusion grounds. After all, the remnants of the Tao transformation were the most special and contained a portion of the great Tao. Right now, there was a little girl sitting cross-legged in the dragon horn shack with her eyes closed. Streams of essence gathered from all directions and entered her body. Below, the 6 children were filled with jealousy and hatred. However, they were unable to approach because this place was isolated by the domain. Sister from the E-clan, look at what we've brought. It's a dragon egg. If we place it in the dragon horn shack, it can mobilize even more essence of heaven and earth, allowing all the remaining fragments of the great Tao to emerge. This is the best offering, shouted the little monster from the extreme martial lineage. Thank you, I don't need it. The little girl who looked like Linoy in the dragon horn shack replied. She concentrated on making use of the land of nirvana and didn't want to say anything else. Gua's eyes flickered, and she persevered, saying, Sister E, as long as you give us 1 or 2 places, we're willing to offer this dragon egg as a sacrifice. The little crow also shouted, That's right, Sister E, it's probably a waste for you to use this place alone. Why don't we go in together? I'm really sorry. I don't understand domains. I only listened to my elder's advice and activated the divine magnets I brought in. I don't know how to open this area, and even I can't walk out myself. I can only wait for my elders to guide me. When they heard this, the eyes of some of the little monsters below turned slightly cold. They felt very disappointed. Sister E, look, I have a rare treasure here. If you give us 1 or 2 places, I'm willing to give it to you. The monster from the extreme martial lineage didn't give up and didn't believe it either. A short sword appeared in his hand, and it immediately made the nearby children's breathing quicken. Their eyes were burning, and they couldn't wait to fight for it. This sword was very simple and unadorned. It was only a foot long, but it was the most suitable weapon for the children. Of course, the reason why it attracted attention was mainly because of its astonishing material. It could be considered a rare treasure of the Yang realm. Its whole body was as red as blood, but it wasn't all colors. On the body of the sword, there were also gold and silver spots, and there were even black spots and cloud-shaped objects. Heavenly Blood Mother Gold. The little girl from the E-clan was originally very calm, but now she also gasped. The so-called Heavenly Blood Mother Gold was considered the top of the rare treasures. It could be ranked in the front of several kinds of mother gold. It was too rare, and it was known as the mother gold nourished by the heavenly blood. Once this thing was sacrificial refined, it could fuse with the flesh and blood of the person and directly communicate with the mind. At the same time, it could also help improve the power of the creature's bloodline, and it had unpredictable and mysterious abilities. As for its sturdiness, it went without saying. This was the most basic element of Mother Gold. It's not only Heavenly Blood Mother Gold, but also a part of Starry Sky Mother Gold. Puppy smiled as she introduced it, pointing to the markings on it. Those markings that were like stars and black holes were the embodiment of Starry Sky Mother Gold. The value of Starry Sky Mother Gold was also difficult to measure. In addition, it was very difficult to fuse 2 kinds of Mother Gold together. The short sword in front of them was a successful case, and it was very perfect. There was no need to think about it. Its lethality was bound to be shocking. At the same time, it could help improve one's bloodline, and it was helpful for cultivation. Nearby, the gazes of a few little demons were frightening. They all wanted to make a move, but they restrained themselves. First, they thought that they also wanted to use this to lure the demon of the E-clan into the land of nirvana. Second, they knew that Puppy was too strong. I found this short sword in the dragon's lair. For this, I fought with a white dragon and was seriously injured. Only then did I manage to kill it and snatch it, Puppy introduced. What he said was not false. In order to get this sword, he had spent a lot of effort. Don't think too much about it. Looking at the entire dragon's lair, this is definitely one of the greatest fates. Even a celestial lord would carefully sacrificial refine this sword. Puppy smiled and made himself look amiable. He shouted toward the sky, I am willing to give this as a gift to the little sister of the E-clan. I only ask for a place to enter the land of nirvana to cultivate. Above, in the dragon horn shack, suspended in midair, the little girl who looked like Linoy showed a look of doubt. She said, Why are you so eager? Even if you achieve nirvana once, it may not necessarily make you advance by leaps and bounds. You just need to cultivate step by step. Puppy said, "The competition is fierce. If I can't improve in the shortest time possible, I'll be killed by other demons in the Taiwu lineage." Chu Feng hid in the dragon egg. He had a moment of doubt. Would the girl, who was suspected to be the descendant of Linoi, really be silly enough to let Puppy go? He was ready to make a move, because it was not only for the sake of rescue, but also for himself. He really couldn't help it. Such a good short sword could be called a treasure weapon that people at this stage could only dream of. This was an irresistible temptation. "Sorry, I really don't know how to open this divine magnetic field." The little girl in midair showed an apologetic look. "Junior sister, you have to think carefully. Look at this treasure made of mother gold," Puppy patiently persuaded her. He raised the short sword in his hand and let the little girl see it more carefully. Chapter 1055. At the same time, Chu Feng raised his other hand and punched the back of the Taiwu branch's genius head fiercely and accurately. Bang! At such a close distance, he was sure to hit the target. This was a shocking change. The moment the core disciple of the Taiwu branch was robbed of his treasured weapon, his heart sank. This thing had changed hands without a sound, which made him shocked and angry. However, almost at the same time, his hair stood on end, and a sharp pain came from the back of his head. His skull seemed to be broken into pieces, which made him blacked out. Although Chu Feng's fist was far from the huge fist of Casserole Pot, its attack power was also very impressive. It was not a problem for him to break a stone tablet. However, this blow did not penetrate the back of Puppy's head, which made him shocked. The genius of the Taiwu branch was stronger than he thought. Because they nourished their blood and bones with the creation substance, it was not a typical evolution, so it was difficult to accurately judge how powerful these little geniuses were. This blow was not similar to the powerful killing blow of Chu Feng, which made the little genius of the Taiwu branch scream. He threw himself forward and staggered to the ground. However, he did not die. The back of his head seemed to be fractured, but it was not penetrated. So hard, Chu Feng sighed inwardly. His hand was very painful, and at the same time, he almost gave him a fatal wound with the dagger in his other hand. Unfortunately, Puppy threw himself forward and failed to decapitate him. All this happened too fast in a split second. Whoosh! Chu Feng's body was in the egg, and he quickly fled into the distance. He used the profound magnetic chi to support his body and turned into a beam of flowing light as he escaped without a trace. He did not want to be passive. After taking away the Mother Gold Sword, the successor of the Taiwu branch would definitely fight with him. In addition, several other people would also be greedy and chase him. If he was surrounded, the situation would be very bad. The fat boy Big White, Ying, and others were all stunned. Before they could see clearly, the genius of the Taiwu branch was bleeding from his 7 orifices and fell to the ground. Then the egg ran away. Puppy stood up in an instant. His eyes were frightening, as fierce as 2 bolts of lightning. His eyes flickered, and he was also in a daze. He saw an egg running away. Roar! With a loud roar, the extreme martial lineage's monster chased after him. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Being ambushed like this and having his precious Mother Gold stolen was truly a great humiliation. The others also jumped up and chased after it, not because they sympathized with Puppy, but because the Mother Gold weapon was too tempting. Not to mention them, even the Celestial Venerables were envious of it and couldn't let it go. Along the way, Chu Feng used the geomagnetic energy in the dragon nest to move faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, he was almost out of sight. Moreover, he was intentionally concealing it. The entire egg was rolling rapidly, and that so-called geomagnetic gas was invisible, so no one could see it at all. From an outsider's point of view, he was rolling all the way, just like an egg. The monstrous genius of the extreme martial lineage was so angry that his hair was standing on end. Even his eyes were red. He had chased for so long, yet he was about to lose his target. The most hateful and shameful thing was that from the beginning to the end, he hadn't seen clearly who the sneak attacker was. A total of more than a dozen little monsters had entered. They could be considered as a group of people, and there were others scattered around. "I'm going to die of anger." Puppy roared angrily. It was too vexed. The back of its head was punched, and the treasure that was a combination of heavenly blood mother gold and starry mother gold was snatched away. It didn't even see who the enemy was. Puppy flew into a rage out of humiliation and trembled with anger. The others were also speechless. This was really a huge loss. The heir of the primordial lineage was almost killed, and he even lost a rare treasure. It was really sullen. Who did this? Was it a little monster from the celestial, venerable Hun Yi's lineage? Could it be that shameless Jeet Dade? The little crow mumbled indistinctly, and the others couldn't hear it clearly. "Don't let me catch you. I'll kill you and turn your bones into ashes." Puppy roared. Its face was distorted, and it was mad with hatred. Suddenly, several dragon claws appeared in midair and grabbed at the skulls of the few people. Cold light flashed and incomparably sharp. With the sound of thunder, they suddenly attacked. Several dragons appeared again and ambushed them. Slaughter the dragons, kill them. The monstrous genius of the extreme, martial Heavenly Lord's lineage was seething with anger. He had originally been suppressing a bellyful of fire, and now it completely erupted. Roar! The dragon's roar surged. The murderous aura here surged, and the battle was very intense. Chu Feng ran away. He fled into the rubble and hid in the thunderstruck wood along the way. He fled like a thief. He really didn't want to fight the furious puppy now, nor did he want to be targeted by the others who were envious of the precious treasure. He hid for a period of time. After a long time, Chu Feng circled back and looked at the place of nirvana. He frowned and pondered for a moment. He gave up this place and didn't fight with the girl who looked like Linoi, because there was more than one place in the dragon nest where nirvana could be achieved. He felt that the place where the old heavenly lord of the dragon clan resided should be strong enough. Chu Feng quietly retreated and began to search. Sure enough, after more than half a day, he found a dark and gloomy cave at the top of the cave wall. It was in a very hidden position, and then it meandered along the mountain to the underground. Back then, this place was originally sealed with a natural concealment of domains. It was very difficult to find, but in the end, several heavenly lords still found it. They went deep inside and defeated the sleeping old dragon. Without a doubt, this road was very sturdy. It was paved with divine magnets and various rare materials to build a sturdy and reliable passage. When he went deep underground, Chu Feng frowned. It was empty inside. It was too clean. Everything had been moved away. He understood. Any artifact left behind in the Heavenly Lord level old dragon's hibernation might be very dangerous and not suitable for a group of little monsters to touch. At the same time, it was also priceless and had been divided up by the heavenly lords who attacked this place. Chu Feng searched along the way and confirmed that there were no other living beings here. He came out of the eggshell. He was still hiding in the egg because he was worried that he would encounter a few dragons. It would be easier to deceive them this way. Has the fortune of this place been destroyed? Chu Feng frowned. He discovered that the earth's veins were damaged and the dragon nest was cracked. It wasn't even as good as the place where the young dragons resided. He wandered around here and was suddenly moved. Then, he observed carefully and found that this place was a bit similar to the ancient domain recorded on the silver page the Sage Master had left behind. Chu Feng was astonished. He thought about what he saw in the young dragon's habitat and then wandered around this area. Then, his body trembled violently. It was really similar. 3 pure ones in one breath. Chu Feng was astonished. This kind of domain was very special. It used a source of natural fortune to deduce 3 kinds of terrains and 3 layers of small world space. At present, he had only seen 2 layers of small world space. Could it be that there was another layer? The Tao begets 1, and the 3 begets all things. There was a source of fortune here that was divided into 3 parts and formed 3 layers of small world space terrains. This kind of domain layout was known as three pure ones in one breath. The silver page the Sage Master had left behind was extremely mysterious. Even now, Chu Feng hadn't studied it thoroughly. The Sage Master from back then was also far from reaching the end. Chu Feng's heart was burning with passion. At the same time, he felt a wave of terror. There was also the third layer space. Just what was hidden there? He felt that it shouldn't be a crisis because there shouldn't be any living creatures. That was because if there was such a thing, how could they allow the heavenly lords to attack? They could just directly destroy it. Chu Feng searched frantically. He guessed that this might be the dragon race's greatest land of fortune and that it hid the secrets of past generations. He carefully recalled the records on the silver page and searched for the path according to the layout. He wanted to enter the third layer of the small world space. However, he didn't find anything after searching for most of the day. It was too secretive. He knew that this should be the case. Otherwise, how could he hide it from the heavenly lords? In the end, he repeatedly measured, verified, and proofread. He searched a specific area in strict accordance with the records on the silver page and inevitably touched a thumb-sized rock. Only then did this abrupt situation occur. His legs went soft, and he inexplicably sank into a rock. Then he found a path. With a swoosh, he fell into an underground labyrinth that resembled a spider web. "It's here!" Chu Feng's heart jumped violently. He activated a wisp of geomagnetic energy according to the domain records and used a special secret art to guide the way forward. In the end, he arrived in front of a spacious underground palace. During this process, he held his breath and brought out the stone jar. He hid himself within it and drove it forward carefully, concealing everything about him. That was because he was truly afraid of accidents and unforeseen events. After all, this kind of three pure ones domain wasn't something an ordinary person could lay down. Moreover, it seemed to be concealing a shocking secret. This underground palace wasn't dark and was emitting a gentle glow. Chu Feng spent a great deal of effort. Even though he followed the Silver Pages records, he still spent an entire day before finally approaching his destination. During this time, he almost touched the restrictions several times. He was certain that without a grasp of the domain layout, even a divine expert in the field of domains would die here. No matter how powerful one was, they would die without a burial if they charged in recklessly. Chu Feng broke out in cold sweat. Fortunately, this part of his memory was still clear, and he hadn't forgotten the three pure ones. Otherwise, he would have died for sure. Finally, he approached the core area and hid within the stone jar. His whole body was hidden amidst the rubble, and he gazed forward. In the blink of an eye, his body tensed up, and even his spirit was trembling. He was completely horrified. He saw an inconceivable scene. What was that? Was that a celestial? There shouldn't be any mistake. That dried-up body with great Tao fragments flowing through it was proof of his invincible power when he was alive. This was an old man with pale golden skin. His body was withered, and his hair was snow white. Although he was dead, his Tao aura hadn't diminished and could still intimidate the heavens. If it wasn't for the fact that kneeling there would damage his dignity, this body surrounded by great Tao fragments was simply too terrifying. Its might was world-shaking. Chu Feng was shaken to the core by the fact that he was actually kneeling there. At the same time, he saw clearly that the old man's expression was actually full of horror. He was kowtowing to a certain colossus, and he was already dead, scared to death. Chu Feng's hair stood on end. He found it hard to believe. What is that? Chu Feng's body and spirit were both shaken. He hadn't sensed anything before and hadn't seen the colossus. He didn't know why he had automatically overlooked it. How could it conceal everything? Chapter 10:56. Was that a living creature? It was clearly not far away and was very close to that celestial sovereign, but why had he overlooked it several times and not left any impression? Chu Feng couldn't help but be surprised. What was going on? He shook his head in the stone jar and focused his attention there. A hazy light covered the area in front of him, concealing a colossus. It was said that the heavens obscured themselves out of self-protection and wouldn't let outsiders sense it. This creature also had such an effect. It concealed everything and almost fooled Chu Feng's fiery eyes. Of course, after coming to such a place, Chu Feng didn't dare to shoot out golden beams of light at all and only watch naturally. If he wasn't hiding in the stone jar, he wouldn't even dare to reveal the golden runes in his eyes. He had already seen clearly that it was a dragon. Its body was enormous and majestic, over 10,000 meters long. Compared to the legendary creature that could shatter a planet with a finger, it wasn't actually that big. However, its charm and posture made people feel that it was larger than the entire universe and more terrifying than all other creatures. This was a dragon. Its entire body was gray, and its scales were simple and unadorned like rocks. There was no luster to them, and there were layers upon layers of them. There was an indescribable ancient charm to them. The dragon's head was drooping. There was no essence, energy, or spirit, and it even seemed lifeless. Its pair of dragon horns were large and swirling with Tao charm. The dragon's eyes were closed, and its eyelids were wrinkled with keratin. Although it didn't move at all and there were no great Tao fragments swirling about, it was too shocking. After all, a celestial sovereign was kneeling in front of it. This was enough to prove how powerful and terrifying it was. The dragon's body was very long, and its scales were gray. It was like a stone dragon that stretched across this place. It was a Western-style dragon, and its body was like an ancient crocodile. There was a pair of gray wings on its back that hung powerlessly at the sides of its body. Its body wasn't bloated, but rather very thin. It could be said to be all skin and bones, and many places were bony, propping up the dragon scales on the outside. One chi into the three pure ones. In such a domain, there was actually an ancient dragon in the small world of the third level. It was so ancient that no one knew which era it originated from. Not to mention that dragon. Even the celestial sovereign kneeling there had been dead for who knew how many years. Looking at the traces of time left behind in his surroundings, it seemed to have been a long time. Almighty! Chu Feng's heart jumped. This life form was able to force an Empyrean to kneel, making him bow his head there, and then finally die here. It was definitely powerful beyond compare. This was the secret of the dragon nest. In the third layer of the small world, there was an old dragon that surpassed the Empyrean level. He should be dead, right? Chu Feng guessed. Otherwise, how could it tolerate several Empyreans taking action and destroying the upper two small worlds? Perhaps it was the ancestor of this nest of dragons. Chu Feng didn't dare to act recklessly. He stared at it and carefully observed it. This dragon's entire body was a treasure. After all, it was just too shockingly powerful. Also, the Empyrean's battle robe and the ruler in his hand also made people excited. Although he was kneeling there, one of his hands was still holding a snow-white ruler. That was the heaven-measuring ruler among weapons. Unfortunately, Chu Feng had no way of approaching. The great Tao fragments that were released from that place were too rich. Even though the heavenly sovereign was aggrieved before he died and knelt there, he seemed to have resisted. Otherwise, how could he have carried the heaven-measuring ruler? That was the most precious treasure he had cultivated with his life. And, suddenly, Chu Feng was horrified, feeling something strange. There were fluctuations within that dragon's body. It wasn't a dead thing. It was a very weak fluctuation, but it would only appear once every long period of time. It was no wonder that Chu Feng only noticed it now. He became even more quiet, his palms even sweating. If this dragon was alive and discovered that his dragon children and grandchildren suffered disaster, forget about him. Even the Empyreans outside would die. Chu Feng waited patiently. He discovered that every so often, this dragon's body would tremble. It was extremely strange. He felt that it was strange, feeling more and more that this dragon should have died. Why was there still vibrating sound? Suddenly, the dragon's eyelids trembled, actually about to open. Chu Feng felt a chill run down his spine. This inconceivable creature was really alive, about to revive. In the end, this dragon's eyes opened slightly, releasing great Tao fragments and not other types of radiance. Then, its frontal bone actually shattered with a bow sound, a bloody hole appearing. In the blink of an eye, it closed its eyes. It used all of its strength to open its eyes, but in the end, its frontal bone cracked. What kind of situation was this? An existence that surpassed the Empyrean level died. Just like that? Chu Feng felt that this wasn't normal. This didn't conform to common sense. This ancient dragon that surpassed the Empyrean level was harming itself? He quietly waited. Not long after, a mysterious event happened as expected. On that enormous head, there was movement from the bloody hole between its brows. Was there something that wanted to crawl out? Soon, a small claw was revealed, and then a portion of its scales appeared. Compared to that 10,000-meter-long old dragon, this unknown creature couldn't even be compared to an insect. Xu Feng's body went cold. What kind of terrifying scene did he see? Was there a creature that killed the old dragon and wreaked havoc within its body, eating dragon flesh? Xu Feng's scalp went numb as he watched. He recalled a legend. There was an emperor among insects. Once they evolved to the extreme level, they dared to hunt down divine beasts, even daring to fight against dragons. Could it be that he encountered this kind of creature? Some strange insects evolved from venomous snakes, toads, and spiders. They fused with each other and fought each other. In the end, it was unknown what species they would become. Once they became Empyreans, their destructive power would be unimaginable. And once they became great existences, it was impossible to estimate their future evolutionary trajectory. Could it be that there was an insect king here that was eating dragons? Xu Feng's imagination ran wild. He couldn't help but think too much, because the scene he saw was too strange. Sigh, another era has passed. Bear in my body. Suddenly, an aged voice rang out, echoing through this underground palace. It was especially terrifying, and it came from the old dragon's frontal bone. In the end, that little creature came out. It indeed looked like an insect. However, Chu Feng carefully identified it and was a bit stunned. It should be a little dragon? It was only a meter long, not very large. The upper part of its body was snow white, and there were also some black stripes. Its dragon horns were black and white, and its eyes were pure and spirited. The most peculiar thing was that at its frontal bone, the black and white stripes intertwined, forming a small yin-yang diagram. Its pair of dragon wings were also alternating between black and white, sturdy and powerful. How could it be a little dragon that crawled out from the enormous dragon corpse? Xu Feng was deeply astonished. The vast sea has turned to dust, thunder and lightning have dried up, and I have lived another era. Year after year, when will it be the end? This little dragon released an aged sigh. Then, it reached out a dragon claw, caressing that terrifying ancient dragon's frontal bone. It sighed softly and said, "Watching your past self decline and die. Who can understand this kind of feeling?" Xu Feng was stupefied. This little dragon was the old dragon's reborn body? The past life was especially regrettable. I was 1 foot into the realm of great existences, yet something unexpected happened to me, stopping here for the rest of my life. Hateful. Its words inadvertently revealed the ancient dragon's evolutionary realm. Xu Feng was stunned. This could only be considered a quasi-great existence? In the end, it was this terrifying, making an Empyrean kowtow, unable to retaliate at all, dying here. He shivered inwardly, realizing a step further how terrifying and unfathomable existences hibernating in the famed mountains and great rivers were. At the same time, he also understood why Empyrean Stone Fox had no way to resist after being banished by his master, only turning things around after escaping to Earth. It wasn't that Empyrean Stone Fox was weak, but rather that the disparity between him and his master was too frighteningly great. Back then, I mistakenly took a 33-layered heaven's grass, allowing me to live a new life every time after dying of old age. It's been 3 lifetimes in a row. Just how many lifetimes can I live? In this life, I will strive to achieve the ultimate evolution and not fear the great calamity of the world, life and death, and reincarnation. When he heard these words, Chu Feng's heart shook violently, and at the same time, a special emotion welled up within him. That was an extreme imbalance in his heart. He had once witnessed the 33-layered heaven's grass, and he had even caught a small root in the ultimate land of reincarnation. In the end, he swallowed it, but all of its medicinal effects were wasted. During the process of rushing through reincarnation, his body was torn to pieces again and again. His soul light exploded, and he was continuously killed off. All types of spiritual treasures he obtained from the ultimate land of reincarnation were used to save his life. Not a single stalk could be left behind. If he could bring this out and eat it, just the thought of it made him excited. But in the end, he was incomparably regretful. He really wanted to smash his head into the ground. This was too wasteful. However, after carefully thinking about it, if he didn't squander those materials, there was no way he could have rushed out alive. After accumulating for a lifetime, I'll start over again in this life. I think I should be able to set foot in the ultimate domain and reach the very top. That little dragon was full of confidence. It was no longer melancholy and instead started to become incomparably confident. Moreover, its voice was no longer aged but rather immature. Since I'm starting over, there's no need for me to speak in a hoarse voice and pretend to be old. I'll just do what I should do. It muttered under its breath and said, "Cut off a few trivial matters and erase all irrelevant memories. I should maintain a pure and innocent heart on the path of evolution." Later on, its style completely changed, and its large eyes became crafty and slippery. In my previous life, I understood a few mysterious burial grounds and also know where some rare great medicines grow. I'll go look for them in this life, and my path will be incomparably smooth. I have no fear, even if I'm only at the shackled realm now. When Chu Feng heard this, he really wanted to pounce over and capture this monster alive. However, he endured it. After all, this old fellow had lived for 3 lifetimes. Only heaven knew what kind of trump cards he had grasped. If he were to go crazy and attack fiercely, it would probably be fatal. These old fellows dare to cut off my retreat and destroy my lair. I'm irreconcilable with you. You even sent your descendants here to temper yourselves. You're going too far. It let out a low roar. If it wasn't for the fact that it was in a crucial period of rebirth and couldn't move, it really wanted to kill its way out when the dragon lair was attacked. At this time, Chu Feng jumped out and pulled it along. "Brother, let's become sworn brothers. We'll go find the land of fortune left behind in your previous life and destroy the martial empire together. I'll go take a look and see which disciples of the celestial venerables are here and which orthodoxies they are from. I'll settle things with you in the future." It wasn't in a hurry to escape. Instead, it prepared to walk out of the underground palace and take a look at the 2 small worlds above. Collect. At the critical moment, it opened its mouth and spat out a special spatial bracelet. It was deep black and refined from a small piece of world stone. It was indeed a peerless spatial treasure. In the blink of an eye, the giant dragon corpse and the celestial venerable's remains were sucked into the bracelet. "Brother, how can you do this? Leave something behind." Chu Feng cried out in his heart. That little dragon sneakily disappeared with a swoosh as it left the underground palace. Chu Feng waited for a long time, but didn't leave. He began to wander around and study the place seriously. Before long, his eyes widened and he cried out in surprise. "The 3rd calabash! Damn it, it's actually here." He saw that the core of the underground palace was shaped like a calabash. Afterward, he quickly activated his geomagnetic energy and carefully investigated. There was indeed a calabash vine connected to this place. So that's how it is. The 3rd calabash has become the core of the dragon lair. That dragon's methods were impressive. It could actually lay down a domain like the one turning into 3 pure ones and divide this place into 3 layers. The last layer was related to the heavenly calabash. It was the smallest calabash that turned this place into a place of fortune. In the first small world, after another round of fighting, the extreme martial, heavenly venerable lineage's monster was seething with anger. After searching for more than a day, he still couldn't find the egg or the culprit. He was incomparably furious and wanted to kill. The little dragon monster crawled out of the underground palace and immediately saw the eggshell left behind by Chu Feng after entering the second small world. After all, this was a cocoon formed by Chu Feng after drinking a large amount of true dragon elixir. It was as smooth as jade and possessed a dense aura of the dragon race. "Oh, be careful. I'll hide in the egg and go out for a spin." Its smile was somewhat cunning. It plunged into the eggshell and sealed itself. It rolled around, wanted to go out in a harmless manner. Ha ha! It laughed happily. Chapter 1057. Below the ground. Chu Feng searched a large circle but didn't find any other objects. There were only 2 corpses that had been taken away by that strange dragon. Not even a hair was left for him. He was a little suspicious. This strange dragon looked very heaven-defying and spoke very frightening words. Was it really as powerful as it said, having lived 3 lives? It said it all by itself. The more Chu Feng pondered, the more he felt something was wrong. The reason why he was subdued was because of the strange dragon's words. Could it be that he had been fooled? Chu Feng was in a daze. He increasingly suspected that he might have been deceived. Could it be that it sensed something and guessed that there was someone in the dark? It didn't know what was going on, so it deliberately hid the truth and falsehood to scare people. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it was possible. That dragon said it had eaten a 33 heavens grass and still had a profound expression, saying that it had eaten it by mistake. How shameless was it? It was blatantly showing off. In an instant, Chu Feng wanted to rush out and capture that strange dragon alive. However, he restrained himself. There were too many ancient monsters on that dragon's body. In the space of the first layer of the small world, a snow-white egg rolled and moved forward in the form of an egg. A dragon fell from the sky, like a light cloud just coming out of the mountain. It hummed a little tune as it rolled. "There's a situation." Suddenly, it stopped and hid in a pile of rubble. In the distance, the evildoer of the extreme martial arts lineage let out a long cry. Not long ago, he had fought 3 battles in a row and was covered in blood, some from himself and some from the Dragon Clan. "Bastard, where are you hiding? Don't let me find you." Puppy roared angrily. It had fought a few battles with others, but it still couldn't find the bastard who had stolen its mother gold sword and attacked it. Since there were no weapons or scriptures in the underground palace, Chu Feng decisively dug all the way down. He would first get the fortunes that he could get his hands on. In case there were any changes, it wouldn't be a loss. His first target was naturally the gourd vine underground. It wasn't very long and only had a section. Too much time had passed, and for some unknown reason, the vine had long been broken. For the gourd vine to be as thick as a water bucket and remain over 50 feet long, it was clearly nourished by the earth veins and runes of laws. However, in the end, it had truly taken form and was not an illusory energy object. "Good stuff," Chu Feng exclaimed. This gourd vine was different from the one that Holly had obtained. It was purplish gold in color and had a slight luster to it. Even though it had been severed from the mother plant, it still had a very strong vitality. Chu Feng looked at it carefully and then put it into the space bracelet decisively. Then, he stuffed it into the stone jar. For others, after obtaining this kind of heavenly treasure, most of them would use it to refine pills or use it as a medicinal primer. It could be considered a rare great medicinal herb. However, to Chu Feng, he would not use it like that. Instead, he treated it as a type of mineral, the main ingredient of the little heaven pellet. Moreover, this was even the main ingredient in the original pill recipe. It had boundless, wondrous effects in terms of nourishing the physical body and soul light. The miraculous effect of the little heaven pellet was similar to the trump cards of those clans and sects that had existed for hundreds of millions of years. Both of them could cultivate the strongest disciples. Therefore, Chu Feng attached great importance to it. "All right, I'll put away this fortune. I can attempt nirvana rebirth here." Chu Feng began to arrange it, but he was also frowning. In fact, the great fortune had already been absorbed. In order to revive and be reborn, that strange dragon used this place to exhaust the fortune. However, he was still very young now. The extent of his constitution's improvement was limited, so he could still draw support from this place. This won't do. I have to seal the entrance. What if that strange dragon comes back and sneaks attacks me? Chufeng walked out along the original path. This time, he was much faster than when he came. After all, he had already explored a safe path. When Chufeng came out, he was very curious. He really wanted to know what that strange dragon was doing now. He planned to go and take a look. In any case, it was fine as long as it didn't disturb him. Huh? Where's the eggshell that I left here? Chufeng revealed a strange expression. The cocoon in the second layer of the small world space was gone. He thought of an extremely absurd possibility. Whoosh! Chufeng rushed to the first layer of the small world space and carefully explored. He couldn't be at ease if he didn't find that strange dragon. He was afraid that it was hiding in the dark and would come back to kill him. Even from afar, he could already hear the sounds of battle. It was extremely intense from afar. Damn, it's that bastard. This was the voice of Big White Fatty, who was also the little crow. Evil creature, go inside. The voice of the extreme martial lineage's little evildoers was trembling. One could see how agitated and angry they were. Following that, the strange dragon's voice was heard. Damn, do the youngsters nowadays not know how to respect the old and cherish the young? You guys want to beat up an egg every time you see it? This is too King unreasonable. I'm so angry. It was a bit dumbfounded. What was going on? Why was it being chased and beaten as soon as it appeared? A group of little evildoers wanted to attack it. They even gave up on the other two dragons and directly came for this egg. In the distance, Chufeng was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but want to look up at the sky and laugh. This strange dragon was actually being hunted down and blocked. What big black pot! Had to bear it for him. Chufeng was quite happy watching. He hid in the distance and really wanted to have a drink. He wanted to sit there and watch the dragons fight. At first, the strange dragon was quite calm and only complained. It thought that a few little evildoers were jealous of the dragon egg and wanted to snatch it to hatch. However, soon it couldn't stay calm. How was this snatching the egg? It was clearly to kill the egg. All kinds of fierce moves were launched at the same time and greeted its body. Bastard, why don't you keep running? Little bastard, who are you scolding? What's with your eyes? I'm a dragon, and this is a dragon egg. Do you understand? The strange dragon scolded. This time, this grandson still dares to talk back. Cook it alive. Big White shouted. Why-ya? The extreme martial lineage's evildoer was so angry that his voice changed. He shouted there and crossed the sky. He blasted out a punch. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. It was a pure lightning fist that hit the egg. Grandson, let's see where you can run. Go to hell. Puppy roared. Boom. The strange dragon wasn't careless either. It tore off a piece of egg skin and stretched out a dragon claw. Black and white light shot out like the energy of yin and yang. Its destructive power was astonishing as it blocked the lightning fist. Bang! However, the little crow and a few others also rushed over. They all attacked and blasted at the dragon egg. Sand and stones flew in this area, and light erupted. They used all kinds of secret techniques. Their strength could be considered top-notch at this age. They were all very strong. That egg was hit. If not for the black and white light interweaving and stabilizing the dragon egg, it would definitely have exploded. Mother Cur, I'm angry. Who did I offend? The strange dragon's voice came from the egg. It was really flustered and exasperated. This was supposed to be the safest way to travel, but why did everyone want to beat it up? It had become a street rat. I'll beat you to death, you bastard. Let's see where you can run to. The little crow attacked. All 10 of his fingers shone, and black light surged and shot forward. He also felt that this egg was too hateful. Not only did it hide and keep a low profile after doing evil, it even dared to roll around and show off. After being discovered, it still refused to admit it and looked arrogant. They had to attack it together and take it down. The dog even roared, "Evil creature, you can't escape even if you have wings. You can't escape no matter where you go. There's no way for you to live. Your grandpa dragon already has wings. I don't need them." Boom! He slapped down with his palm. This time, he used the great martial divine light palm. For a moment, there was a burst of light like 9 suns across the sky, illuminating the entire cave residence. The air exploded and energy surged violently. Dragon fights in the wild. A pair of claws stretched out from the eggshell, followed by a pair of hind legs and a tail. It stood there like a human, but didn't show its head. Because the yin and yang pattern on its forehead was too special, it was afraid that it would be targeted and remembered. This strange dragon roared, and the dragon's shadow surged as it fought fiercely with the dog. The monster of the great martial school was furious. This guy was a typical hiding his head and showing his tail. He had already revealed that he was a dragon, but he still used an eggshell to cover his face. Was he teasing him? Too hateful. Kill. A few monsters rushed up together, and then the strange dragon couldn't hold on anymore. It was beaten dizzy, its tail was pulled, and its dragon scales were about to be peeled off. Arrogant dragon regrets. It roared and swung its tail, slapping the little crow away. Its face immediately swelled up, and there was a lot of blood around its eyes. It was a typical black eye. Damn, I got off to a bad start. I wanted to take in a few monsters as servants, but I didn't expect to meet a few little lunatics. Inexplicable. The strange dragon was indignant. Originally, it thought that if it turned into a dragon egg, others would definitely find it strange and carefully put it away, leaving it to hatch because it could become one of the strongest war beasts. At that time, it would have a chance to play the pig to eat the tiger and suddenly take in slaves. In the end, as soon as it revealed its head, it was beaten until it was stupefied. Were dragon eggs so worthless that people didn't want to see them? Who could reason with? It still wants to take us as servants. It's really a mad dragon. We'll eat a whole roasted dragon later and kill it. A group of people shouted. Bang! The strange dragon was sent flying, beaten miserably. If it wasn't for its shockingly tough skin and flesh, it would have been torn to pieces long ago. It was impossible for it to survive. Master Dragon will leave today. The mountains will not change, and the rivers will continue to flow. We'll meet again in 18 years. At that time, the men will warm the bed, and the women will be servants. Ah, pay. It's the other way around. Then, it couldn't continue and was sent flying. In the end, it rode the huge amount of dragon chi in the dragon nest, floated in the air, and ran away with a whoosh. That's right, that's it. The monster from the extreme martial lineage said hatefully and chased after it. At first, he was a little doubtful that it was this dragon, but now that he saw the same method of riding chi to escape, he was sure that it was this dragon. A group of people chased after it. Return my golden mother sword. Damn dragon, I'll pull out your tendons and pull out your bones. Why do I feel like there's something going on here? The strange dragon mumbled. Bang! All of a sudden, a small white hand reached out from the side and slapped it away, sending it crashing into the stone wall. It rolled out of the room. Ying appeared and blocked its path. Good. Behind them, the descendants of the extreme martial lineage, the little crow, and the others were overjoyed. This time, they had to suppress this dragon. Bang! In the middle of the stone wall, a huge boulder was pushed away, and there was a path there. Chu Feng showed his head and waved at the strange dragon, saying, Brother Dragon, this way. The strange dragon scuttled over with a whoosh. If it didn't run over, it would really be beaten up. It was still a little confused. Did its appearance attract so much hatred? Those people would rather give up the other 2 dragons and chase after it. This was simply crazy. It was indignant. Good brother, you're really not bad. You're so righteous and didn't wallow in the mire with them. The strange dragon rushed over and patted Chu Feng's shoulder. Chu Feng secretly curled his lips. He was a little skeptical about whether this was a real old monster or not, but he didn't show it and said, Well said, I feel like old friends at first sight. Also, I hate these shameful moves that don't have any technical content and don't pay attention to details. The strange dragon said, I think you're not bad. Follow me in the future. I guarantee you'll rise. Don't be fooled by those brats thinking they're monsters. In fact, in this dragon's eyes, they're just that. In the future, I'll beat them all up. They're nothing. Good. Let's get closer in the future. What's your name, brother dragon? Chu Feng also patted its shoulder. I'm Long Dayu, said the strange dragon. Then, its expression changed. Run, because the pursuers were coming. The corner of Chu Feng's mouth twitched. There was no one else with this name. Brother dragon, leave first. Charge into this tunnel. There are a few young dragons hiding at the end. Call them over and kill your way out. I'll help you block them. Good brother, you're so righteous. The strange dragon spoke politely, but its body didn't have any spirit of loyalty. It turned around and ran. Chu Feng shouted, Brother dragon, remember to make it clear to those dragons. We don't fight each other. Show them my face with a mirror light technique to avoid misunderstandings and infighting. I'll do it, don't worry. Long Dayu shouted and disappeared in a flash. Chu Feng stood on the spot and laughed. Then, he couldn't laugh anymore. The girl, Ying, was waiting not far away. She stared at him angrily. We're on the same side. Just pretend you didn't see or hear anything. With that, Chu Feng also ran. He wouldn't really help the strange dragon block the pursuers. It wasn't easy to meet a scapegoat, so he might as well let it become more famous. He ran over just to form a good relationship with the strange dragon so that they could work together in the future. With a whoosh, he ran from another fork in the road, ready to go to Nirvana. Chapter 1058. The strange dragon came back with a few young dragons to settle the score with the extreme martial school's geniuses. It was actually besieged and beaten black and blue. This was simply a joke. Little ones, beat them hard and kill them with no regard for your lives. When the time comes, Master Dragon will take you far away from this dragon's lair and guarantee that you won't be enslaved by this group of bastards. Long Dayu boosted the morale and rushed to the front to fight with the group of geniuses. Die! Puppy roared. Stupid boy, go to hell. Young World Tyrant Dragon Fist. The strange dragon roared. He really wanted to take away a few geniuses and make them his servants. Bang, bang, bang. A group of people fought and used all kinds of combat skills. Blood splashed and the fight was quite intense. The extreme martial school's genius was anxious. One of his arms was almost torn off by the strange dragon. He was covered in blood and his hair was disheveled. He actually couldn't beat the strange dragon. He originally thought that because he was slightly older and the strongest among the group of geniuses, he could take the lead here. In the end, he was beaten dizzily by a strange dragon. Extreme Martial Millstone Fist. Puppy roared and opened his mouth to spit out a beam of light. This was the energy in his body boiling and overflowing from his mouth and nose. In a split second, his fists turned golden, especially when he waved his fists. A pair of golden millstones appeared, rumbling and rotating here, crushing all things in all directions. Some lightning struck trees and rocks, turned into powder, and exploded after being touched. This kind of fist technique was very strong. The strange dragon's tail was accidentally crushed in. Dragon scales fell off and blood flowed out. It let out a strange cry and hurriedly swung its tail to break free. Bang! It swung its tail and whipped Puppy off the ground, breaking 2 of its bones. This dragon is strange. Its leather armor is too hard and can't be broken at all. Even a true dragon cub can't do that. We are already the strongest core disciples of this age in the Yang world. This is not normal. Inform the elders outside. The extreme martial school's genius shouted. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and was frightened. If this went on, they would all die here and none of them would survive. Bah, I'm so talented. There's nothing you can do if you're not convinced. Besides, you still want to get in touch with the outside world? Don't you know what kind of place this is? The Heavenly Dragon Lair, isolated from the outside world. In addition, I have already used the heavenly light mirror to investigate. There are no heavenly venerables outside, only some servants. Go ahead and scream. Even if you scream until your throat breaks, no one will be able to save you. He. The strange dragon laughed wildly, looking like an old ruffian. His attitude was as wretched as it could get. The monstrous genius of the extreme martial school was furious. What kind of nonsense was that? The little crow's feathers also exploded, saying, "Damn dragon, you really are shameless, even screaming your lungs out. You grandson, you really are shameless and lowly, speaking as if it's something. I'll slaughter you." After a scuffle, 6 or 7 of Puppy's bones were broken, which was quite miserable. If it were not for his special millstone fist with amazing defensive power and the 2 golden millstones in front of him, he might have died. Even so, there was a terrible wound on his neck, and his throat was almost severed by the dragon claws. The evil dragon dares to act violently? We're here. Loud shouts came from afar, and a few more monstrous geniuses appeared, charging together with fierce eyes. A total of more than a dozen monstrous geniuses came in and finally dispersed. These few people walked together and observed in the dark for a period of time. They felt that if they did not help, everyone would die in the hands of this group of dragons, and now they had to join forces. For a moment, this place was plunged into a bloody battle. Even Long Dayu was howling. A few dragon scales were torn off, and his body was dripping with blood. He grinned and said, "A phoenix without its feathers is not as good as a chicken. I'm really unlucky today. By the way, where did my brother go? Why is he nowhere to be seen? Kill, slaughter this strange dragon. Io, this dragon is really strange. Look at its forehead. There's an yin-yang diagram. It's too strange. Kill it." The dragon egg was smashed into pieces, and the strange dragon revealed its true body, which shocked many monstrous geniuses. For a moment, the battle here became more and more intense. All of this had nothing to do with Chu Feng. He had long run to the 3rd small world and officially began his journey of nirvana. He used the most radical method to completely activate the remnant activity of the 3rd calabash. He wanted to nourish himself in the shortest time possible and succeed in nirvana. This was because he felt that he didn't have enough time. It was better to obtain the opportunity as soon as possible. However, doing so would easily cause a violent tremor in his essence chi. Fortunately, he had the true dragon liquid in his hands. If he was really injured, he could drink a mouthful at any time to alleviate the danger. As time passed, the core of the 3rd small world emitted a lustrous light. Following that, the heaven and earth essence boiled, and the remnant essence seeped out from the earth veins. In addition, the dragon chi essence that had accumulated in the dragon nest for many years was also gathered. At the same time, the runes naturally produced by the heaven calabash terrain all appeared. The core was in the shape of a calabash. Now, it was like a purple-gold calabash had appeared. Its entire body was translucent and emitted a hazy glow. This so-called 3rd calabash was very small compared to the heavenly pit in the tribe. It was only 1,000 feet wide, but it became more and more resplendent as purple light flowed. Later on, a strange scene occurred here. A purple-gold calabash trembled and flowed with multicolored light. There seemed to be a dazzling golden core contained within it. Without a doubt, Chu Feng was that golden core that was nurtured by the entire calabash terrain. What a pity! It was all squandered by that strange dragon to nourish its old body for rebirth. It didn't leave much active essence for me. Chu Feng sighed. Of course, this was also within his expectations. If there was still a large amount of opportunities here, that strange dragon wouldn't just leave. It would definitely continue to hibernate here. Finally, a day and a night later, some fine patterns appeared on Chu Feng's skin. They were caused by the natural runes within the purple-gold calabash. He was nourished and nurtured by the dragon nest. It was like a congenital rebirth experience in a mother's womb. It made his organs increasingly tough, sparkling, and powerful. At this moment, his bone marrow was imprinted with the purple-gold calabash's rune fragments. They emitted purple light, and the cells all over his body continuously released hidden potentials. This wasn't an increase in realm, but his corporeal body and soul light had become stronger. Chu Feng felt that he could even fight and kill a carefree level evolver now. It was already very frightening for a child who wasn't even a year old to have this kind of strength. Even the strongest descendants nurtured by those ancient sects that had existed forever were no better than this. Now, Chu Feng had finally caught up. He felt that even if he immediately killed his way out, he could deal a ruthless blow to the dog without worrying about being defeated. He was very satisfied as he looked at his little arms and legs. They were full of new strength and exuberant vitality. There was also considerable energy. This kind of improvement in constitution was very impressive. Of course, he was also a little regretful. The essence here was obtained by the strange dragon after all. Otherwise, he could have improved himself a step further. Another day and a night have passed. What's the situation outside? Let's go out and take a look. Chu Feng came out of seclusion. When he opened the exit of the third layer of the small world, he heard the strange dragon's angry roar. It was digging with a group of little dragons. Damn it, that bastard has blocked my escape route. There's not enough time. If by any chance that group of celestial lords with mixed hair suddenly come in, I'm dead meat. The strange dragon was really scared and incomparably angry at the same time. Its old nest had been tampered with, and it couldn't find the entrance for a while. Originally, it had already occupied the upper hand and was killing that group of little demons in an incomparably sorry state. It looked like it couldn't hold on any longer, but in the end, it had to give up because there wasn't much time left. It had to leave. Upon seeing this, Chu Feng hurriedly slipped away from the other side of the pile of rocks. Otherwise, he would be blocked here by this strange dragon, and it would fight him to the death. After a long time, he circled back. At this moment, Long Dayu had finally dug that passage. Long Dayu, what's wrong with you? Do you need my help? Chu Feng popped his head out from the pile of rocks. Mother of Asterisker, you're the one who tampered with this, aren't you? The strange dragon flew into a rage after seeing him. It had a belly full of anger because it couldn't find the culprit behind this destruction. Chu Feng denied flatly and said, "What kind of damned place is this? I don't understand it at all." At first, the veins on the strange dragon's forehead were bulging. However, its expression also changed in an instant and revealed a hint of fear. It muttered to itself, "It seems an expert has really come in. He actually knows about domains. Sigh, I can't avoid it. If there's danger, I can only ride the corpse of my previous life and fight to the death. I'll be fine as long as I don't get targeted by reincarnation hunters." Chu Feng's heart trembled. He secretly rejoiced that he hadn't provoked this strange dragon. As expected, this fellow had a trump card and a backup plan. The strange dragon called out to the group of little dragons and rushed into the third layer of the small world. There was a large-scale transportation domain it had set up here that could reach the other side of the Yang realm. "Brother, what's your name? I haven't asked for your name yet. Why don't you go with me?" The strange dragon shouted before leaving. Chu Feng said, "My name is G-Dade. I won't go with you. We'll meet again if fate allows it. Or you can come to this desolate land to find me. I'm sure my name will spread throughout this desolate land in a few years." "All right, I'm Dayu and you're Dade. It's really fate. We'll meet again in the future." The strange dragon ran away with a few young dragons. "All right, we'll meet again if fate allows it." "Brother, I'll help you block the pursuers," shouted Chu Feng. "Good brother. I'll give you a fortune in the future." Long Dayu disappeared without a trace. Chu Feng strolled around and appeared in the first layer of the small world. In the end, he found Goa, Little Crow, and the others. They were recovering from their injuries. All of them had almost died, and each of them was gravely injured. "Brothers, how are you?" asked Chu Feng. G-Dade, the evildoer of the extreme martial school, shouted angrily. Chu Feng laughed coldly and said, "What are you shouting for? Put your hands on your heads and squat there. You're all my captives. If you want to live, the men will warm the bed and the women will be slaves." I said it the other way around. Outside the dragon nest, some old fellows were discussing with smiles on their faces. Speaking of which, it's been a few days. I don't know what's going on inside, but I think our clan's Cheelin child should be fine. He can laugh proudly until the end. Oh, there's no need to say more. The extreme martial school's descendant is the strongest. Naturally, he'll be respected. Chapter 1059. In the third layer of the dragon's lair, the strange dragon dug up a secret area and revealed a divine magnetic platform. This was a super teleportation domain that could reach the other side of the Yang realm. Then it wiped off its cold sweat and said, "That scared the dragon to death. We can finally be on our way." What exactly is that G. Dade's background? He's not a good person at first glance. Fortunately, I suppressed him. Just wait and see this grandson. I'll definitely take care of you in the future. It had a lingering fear in its heart and looked extremely frightened. Its forehead was full of cold sweat that seeped out from its scales. It was extremely exaggerated. Why do I feel like he's a little like someone? How strange, it muttered. Then it waved its claws and called out to the young dragons. Let's go to the ultimate place of evolution with me. In the future, you and I will live together and look down on the primordial world. We'll fight our way out of the Yang realm and clash with the animals from other nodes and branches of evolution. In the end, it disappeared with a flash of light along with the young dragons. Then, the divine magnetic platform burned and turned into ashes, leaving nothing behind. Outside the dragon's lair, a group of people was still in heated discussion. The great martial Heavenly Venerable is really happy recently. First, he defeated his old enemy and illuminated Qingzhou with a cold sword light, displaying the might of a true great Heavenly Venerable. Now his descendant is shining so brightly and will dominate here. If there are no accidents, this child will inherit his legacy and become a new generation of Grand Empyreans before he becomes a third-step cultivator or before the Empyrean exalt declines. Oh, let's wait for the results. I think we can open the dragon's lair in 2 days. A group of old men was discussing. Obviously, the true Heavenly Venerables couldn't wait here for long. Currently, the ones waiting here were all their direct subordinates. In fact, if the experts outside knew what happened in the first layer of the dragon's lair, they would definitely tremble in pain. Chu Feng was now facing 8 evildoers alone. That was really like a hawk looking at a wolf and a hawk looking at a wolf. He didn't seem like a good person at all. He would beat and rob whoever he saw. These people had harvested from the dragon's nest. They had more or less picked some special fruits. Even if they couldn't use the catalyst to evolve, it was worth it to sell them to others or keep them for their own use in the future. It was to the extent where there were some who obtained precious artifacts, for example, a dragon horn. It wasn't the type that was damaged after transforming into the Tao. It was still sparkling and translucent, its entire body snow white like jade. Of course, this was only a small section. It was a branch of a certain young dragon race's horn. It was as thick as an arm, winding and winding, taller than a person. Chu Feng unceremoniously took it for himself and muttered, "Not bad. This thing can be made into a wind and fire thunder rod or a heaven and earth staff. It's really a good material." The monster whose dragon horn was snatched away felt so distressed that his eyes turned red. He wanted to fight with his life on the line, but Chu Feng sent him flying with a single slap. "You still want to take it back?" "Bah, once it's in my pocket, don't even think about taking it back. Who asked you to hunt me down with that bastard Gowa? This is interest. You should consider it filial piety." Chu Feng looked down at him. This group of people had already been seriously injured. In the battle with the strange dragon, they were almost completely annihilated. They were hanging on by their last breath. Once they relaxed, they naturally understood their terrible condition. Their bones were broken, their tendons were torn, and their internal organs were ruptured. It was difficult for them to fight with Ji Kada. Chu Feng not only robbed them, but also threatened them. "I'll give you a chance. Call me Big Brother. When I grow up in 18 years, I'll look for you. You can follow me to battle. In your dreams." That person said angrily. Chu Feng threatened him. Let me tell you, if you don't lower your head and submit, and if you don't swear on your soul, I'll chop you to death. At this point, he kicked this person over and walked toward the monster of the extreme martial school. He decided to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, starting with him. Go-Wa, you've been hunting me down ever since we entered the dragon lair. You're too cruel. Did I dig up your ancestral grave, or steal the coffin of the extreme martial school? Evil creature, you're courting death, the extreme martial school's descendant rebuked. Go to hell. Chu Feng laughed coldly and pounced over. His snow-white fist erupted with light as he directly punched out. The first person he wanted to kill after entering the dragon lair was Go-Wa. He didn't have the chance before because he wasn't strong enough to make a move. But after drinking the true dragon liquid and undergoing nirvana, he was qualified. I'll kill you. Go-Wa laughed coldly. Although his hair was disheveled and a few of his bones were broken, light shot out from his 7 apertures. He forced himself to use his potential to fight with Chu Feng. He opened his mouth and spat out a flying sword that was as green as jade. Then, it blossomed with dazzling green light and was about to chop off Chu Feng's head. It was very abrupt. Chu Feng tilted his head and dodged. Then he waved his fists and displayed the small fish fist. In an instant, under the rustling of the rain, many small black fish swam in the void, bringing along a special cold aura. Shaoyin fist, someone cried out, recognizing this fist technique. After seeing it, Go-Wa's gaze became even colder. He said, I hate nether spirits the most. It's said that this is a secret manual passed down from the netherworld. I hate this kind of aura. Chu Feng was furious. The extreme martial school hated nether spirits the most. Even his disciples were the same. They said that nether spirits should die and should be killed. Back then, in the small netherworld, the people of the extreme martial school were so overbearing and cold-blooded. They massacred wantonly and didn't see the creatures of the netherworld as human beings. Now, this little bastard was the same. He hated people and things related to the netherworld since he was young. This was only a fist technique, and it was on par with the ancient Shaoyin fist, but it was also hated by him. I hate your school the most. Why do you pretend to be powerful? Go to hell. Chu Feng used the Shaoyin fist to fight against the flying sword. For a moment, sparks flew everywhere. Several small black fish jumped in the void, constantly colliding with the green flying sword. This sword was very extraordinary. It was made of special green gold. It was found in the dragon's nest by a monster of the extreme martial school, and it was very suitable for him. Swish, swish, swish. There seemed to be green lightning in the void, crisscrossing and interweaving. That was the flying sword showing its power. It was chopping here at a very fast speed. Chu Feng didn't use the lightning fist, the Vairocana fist, or the Yin-Yang divine light to avoid revealing his identity. He just activated the Shaoyin fist. As his fist moved, small black fish appeared in the void one after another. Each fish was sometimes as hard as iron, sometimes as soft as water, changing unpredictably. In the end, dozens of small black fish surrounded the flying sword, suppressed it, and snatched it. Extreme martial millstone fist. All the inheritances related to the netherworld. Go to hell. Puppy's long hair flew in the wind, and his eyes were fierce. In front of his fists, a golden millstone appeared, rotating slowly as if it wanted to obliterate everything. Its power was very amazing. Your bones are broken, but you are brave. Lie down. Chu Feng sneered and attacked with all his strength. After 6 punches, the golden energy millstone collapsed, and a rich golden energy exploded here. Puppy screamed, bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth, and was thrown out. With a bang, he hit the thunderstruck wood. Many of his bones were broken, and his internal organs were torn. In fact, it wasn't easy for him to fight to this point because the strange dragon almost killed him several times. If it were someone else, they would have died 6 or 7 times. He could survive under the strange dragon's hands because he exhausted all kinds of backup plans and vitality, and he even used up several kinds of great medicine obtained in the dragon's nest. And now he encountered Chu Feng. How could he resist? Bang! Next, Chu Feng stomped down ruthlessly, making the extreme martial school's monster glare angrily, his eyes incomparably resentful. He felt that all the bones and tendons in his body were broken, and he was crippled. The precious body that he had refined since childhood was now broken, like a balloon being poked with a hole, and the energy poured out. At the same time, his soul light dimmed, and a large part of it was shaved off. "You dare to cripple me," he shouted. It was worse than death, and he might as well kill him. Why not? After entering the dragon's nest, it's a fight between dragons and tigers, and life and death don't matter. Chu Feng hesitated a little, but he didn't kill him in the end. He was afraid that Dong Qing and the Divine Temple Fairy wouldn't have a good ending. After all, the extreme martial school was very powerful, and crippling this dog was more or less enough. If he himself grew up and encountered the extreme martial school's people, he would definitely kill them without mercy. Chu Feng took the green flying sword into his hand. It was only half a foot long, and it was rather elegant and glossy, but it was very sharp. He looked down at the group of monsters and said, "Call me brother quickly, or else you'll learn from this dog's mistakes." After that, he fixed his eyes on the little crow. The big white fat boy saw Chu Feng strolling over, and his hair immediately stood on end. Then, he didn't need Chu Feng to threaten him, and he immediately became terrified and shouted loudly, "Brother, you must be my long-lost blood brother. My mother said that I have an elder brother who was lost in the world of mortals, and we hit it off as soon as we met. I have a feeling that you're my blood brother. Otherwise, why would I say it's fate? We got to know each other outside the dragon's nest, and I feel like I'm seeing another me when I see you. Our temperaments are very similar, and we're both good people, blood brother." His face was full of smiles, and he had a very shameful appearance. Chu Feng glanced at him and said, "What's with your eyes? You look like a bastard that's rotten to the point of oozing pus. How can your temperament be similar to mine? Just call me Big Brother. Don't call me Big Brother, it's disgusting. How about this? You make an oath to follow me into battle in the future." "Okay, I swear." The little crow was very cooperative, and his smile was like a dog's tail flower. Although it was brilliant, it made people feel disgusted. The others were disgusted, but this spineless coward actually surrendered and compromised. However, the others also lowered their heads in shame, because they also gave in and called Chu Feng Big Brother one after another. There was a saying, "A wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him." Chu Feng looked at the girl Ying and said, "Look at you, a girl walking together with a group of bad people. What a scandal. Luckily you met me, and I saved you at the first moment." The others were speechless. "Who was a bad person? You were the worst? Okay." Ying was angry, but she didn't say anything. For the sake of her ninth master, Chu Feng definitely couldn't beat her. After all, he still counted on her grandfather to provide rare materials, so that Chu Feng could refine 3 caddies and 8 tails of pills for him. Both sides had to benefit each other. "You guys really have a lot of good things on you." Chu Feng was pleasantly surprised. He found a broken armor from the body of another little evildoer, which was refined from dragon scales. Originally, dragon scales were very big, and one piece was taller than their height. However, after this armor was refined, the scales looked to be no more than an inch long, and they were very fine. It was a pity that the little evildoer found it in the depths of the dragon's cave. "It's mine." Chu Feng accepted it without hesitation, and added, "Who told you to hunt me down with Gua?" In the end, Chu Feng looted them all. He discovered that there was one less descendant of Linoi, who should still be undergoing nirvana. In addition, there were also the twin sisters that he had met on the path of reincarnation. The others had either died in the dragon's lair or were captured by him. "And you guys help me pick the herbs, and I'll give you half later." Chu Feng called over the group of seriously injured people, telling them to pick the dragon blood fruit and other things. 2 days later, the dragon's lair opened. The group of old fellows were all smiling, ready to receive their own evildoer descendants. As soon as they opened the dragon's lair, they heard a loud noise from inside. The voices were very uniform, and a group of little evildoers were calling him Big Brother. Interesting, an absolute expert actually emerged from the competition. He should be the descendant of the extreme martial school. Not simple. It doesn't matter. Just because he won this time doesn't mean he'll be the strongest in the future. After all, some people are a bit older. Oh, if I remember correctly, there's the youngest child here. His name is G-Dade, and he's probably beaten up badly. The descendant of the extreme martial school doesn't like him. Someone said with a smile. In reality, he really wanted to say that the child was probably already dead. Chapter 1060. Dong Qing furrowed her brows, saying that G-Dade would be miserable in front of her and hinting that he was most likely dead naturally caused her expression to turn ugly. Even though the young mistress she was protecting had said that life and death were decreed by fate, and that it was normal if he couldn't survive, she still didn't feel good about it and didn't want to see Chu Feng die. After all, this was the child she had personally taken care of. Even if it was only 2 or 3 months, she had some feelings for him. Of course, she knew that this wasn't right. For this inheritance of theirs, they had to choose powerful individuals, the protectors of the future inheritors. They themselves had to be tough. This was something that the young miss and her mother-in-law had emphasized over and over again. Dong Qing could only sigh as she was powerless to change anything. Dao brother, congratulations. The extreme martial heavenly deity has a successor. Someone walked up to congratulate the extreme martial lineage's experts. Those are the 3 old divine kings. They personally came here. This time, almost none of the Empyreans came. They had already swept away the obstacles here and captured the old dragon at the Empyrean realm. They would not appear again. The old divine king of the extreme martial lineage was full of smiles as he said, "Hee, congratulations to you too. My clan's inheritor is on good terms with your juniors." Before entering the dragon's nest, they said that they wanted to work together. They must have also benefited greatly. Gua, a crow flew over. This was the Empyrean's mount, and it was in charge of receiving the big, white, chubby youngster. It spoke in human language. I wonder how the little master is doing. He once said that he wanted to befriend a few good brothers and fight shoulder to shoulder in the future. On the side, there were a few people who curled their lips. That little crow had clearly spoken arrogantly before, saying that he was going to subdue 1 or 2 underlings and make them follow him. Now he actually beautified it like this. Let's go and see what's going on. Someone laughed. The dragon nest was extremely special, able to isolate itself from the outside world. This was a place that sees the natural luck of heaven and earth. If one didn't walk inside right now, all types of restrictions activated, it would be extremely difficult to see through the situation inside. The cave was extremely spacious, covered in lightning-struck wood. It carried a pitch-black luster and was full of yang energy. This type of wood was considered an extremely rare medicinal primer in the outside world, but here it was everywhere. "Everyone, please come in. Please." A young god king of the grand martial lineage was rather reserved. After hesitating slightly, he walked in without any politeness. He smiled. This is... How dare you? What are you doing?" Ever since they walked into the depths of the dragon cave, everyone present sensed the situation, and their expressions became extremely interesting. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, they rushed to their destination and arrived at the scene, all of them excited. The divine kings of the Taiwu lineage found it the most difficult to control themselves. Their fingers trembled slightly. Caw! Empyrean Crow's mount opened its mouth and cried out, staring ahead in shock. What happened to the monstrous geniuses of the extreme martial school? Upon closer inspection, he was lying on a blue stone, dispirited and lethargic. Not to mention the injuries on his body. Even his face was swollen and bruised, especially when he was being sat on by someone else. Didn't they say that he was going to be the king here? In the end, he became a human steed G-Dade. The eyes of the three god kings of the Taiwu lineage were cold. They had never thought that their successor would end up in such a miserable state, sitting on a rock and being used as a cushion. Then, the crow couldn't stay calm either. It opened its beak wide and looked ahead because the little crow was massaging G-Dade's back, looking like a lackey. The group of people couldn't accept this result. It was this youngest child who dominated and looked down on the group. These little monsters were all very obedient, at least on the surface. They were all injured and suppressed here. How could it be you? The old god king of the Taiwu lineage angrily rebuked. Seeing his own successor in such a miserable state and that G-Dade sitting on top, his killing intent was revealed. What do you want to do? Not only did Dong Qing stand out, but the silver-haired granny also came, blocking his path and glaring at him. You're going too far. How can you be like this? The young god king of the Taiwu lineage shouted. He raised his hand, and five-color divine light flickered. He wanted nothing more than to kill Chu Feng. Dong Qing went forward and said, "What a joke. After coming in, life and death are no longer counted, and everything is up to the heavens. Your lineage's successor didn't die, so you should be content and not angry. Do you want to kill someone?" Chu Feng jumped off the bluestone and spoke at the right time. Everyone misunderstood. "I'm afraid he'll commit suicide and then personally suppress me. You can ask them if you don't believe me." He pointed at the little crow, Ying Ying, and the others, indicating that they could ask as much as they wanted. These people were slightly embarrassed, but they had no choice but to nod. "What's going on?" The Taiwu lineage's divine king angrily rebuked. "I've been crippled by him." The dog's eyes were full of resentment. She wanted nothing more than to kill Chu Feng immediately. "You're so cruel." The Taiwu lineage's old divine king's face darkened and was about to flare up on the spot. Chu Feng said, "Why don't you ask him?" "He's been chasing after me ever since I entered the dragon lair, and I'm only defending passively. It's already good enough that I left him alive." The Taiwu lineage's people's faces were ashen. They couldn't hold on any longer. Boom! One of the Taiwu lineage's three great divine kings stirred up a dazzling light beam from runes, but it was instantly suppressed by the old granny beside Dong Qing. This place became calm and tranquil. "Caw, little master, how are you?" the crow asked the little crow. I'm okay." The little crow revealed an ugly expression. Then, without hesitation, he broke away from Chu Feng and walked over to the crow's side. Only now did the group of people come back to their senses. The wind was in a mess. The child who was considered to be the youngest had actually won. He had defeated all his opponents and had come out on top. Meanwhile, the most popular inheritor of the extreme martial school was in such a miserable state. Chu Feng said, "A few geniuses died. Hurry up and look for them. In any case, it has nothing to do with me. If they weren't killed by the dragon, then they were killed by the successor of the Taiwu Heavenly Lord." What? Although they were already mentally prepared, there were still a few people present whose expressions changed. They quickly rushed into the depths of the dragon lair, but in the end, they only found a few corpses. One of the middle-aged beauties was extremely worried and even had a terrified expression. But in the end, when she found a pair of smiling twin sisters, she was completely relieved. She believed from the bottom of her heart that these two sisters were stronger than everyone else and would not have any problems. But just now she was still shocked. When the Yi family's people brought the girl who resembled Linoy out of the Dragonhorn shack, the Yi family members also heaved a sigh of relief. There were also a few people who were angry and heartbroken because they had lost their sect's top descendant. Although there were a few little monsters in their sect, only one had been brought here today. But they were still unwilling to die here, and they were also very angry. "It was all the dragon's doing. It has nothing to do with us." At this time, the little crow had no choice but to quickly explain. Although there was competition among all parties, now that they had seen the tragic death of their clan's core disciple, no one's expression was good. If this anger was ignited, there would be a bloody battle to the death. "Forget it, let's go," someone roared. When he said go, he didn't mean to leave, but to enter the depths of the dragon lair and divide up the various remaining fortunes and treasures. There were naturally many opportunities in such a vast dragon lair. "Are you all going to leave just like that?" Chu Feng asked. "What else do you want?" Dong Qing smacked his forehead with a dong sound. This time, it was truly an unexpected surprise. She had never thought that this brat would be able to suppress all the other freaks and ultimately emerge victorious. "Don't knock your head." The silver-haired granny stopped him. She was very doting, and the way she looked at Chu Feng was completely different from before. The results of today's battle gave her a great surprise. "What else did you think? Did you want us to fight?" Dong Qing knocked him again. Chu Feng mumbled, "I was worried for nothing. I even deliberately spared Guo's life, lest you guys can't clean up the mess and fight to the death with others." Not long after, when the dragon lair was divided up by all parties, everyone came over. This time, they couldn't help but stare at Chu Feng again and again. "I'll be embarrassed if you guys look at me like this." Chu Feng blinked his pure big eyes and pretended to be embarrassed. "Go to hell." The group of little monsters all curled their lips. With their elders in front of them, they were considered fearless. They had all been seriously injured before, so they had no choice but to lower their heads. "Sigh, 20 years later, this will definitely be a disaster." Someone sighed. Chu Feng corrected and said, "Who said that? I'll make my debut in 13 years, but I definitely won't be a disaster. When the time comes, I'll work together with a group of brothers to achieve great things." As he spoke, he nodded at the group of monsters and greeted them one by one. This group of monsters was sick of seeing him. They really didn't want to see him being suppressed in the dragon's lair, but now they were too embarrassed to tell their elders. It was too embarrassing. Moreover, they had already sworn an oath. If this bastard came looking for them in the future, would they really fulfill their promise? They were too conflicted. However, they also believed that the clan should have a secret technique to break the curse of oaths, so the problem wasn't too big. "Everyone, before we leave, I have a piece of news. That person in Yongzhou has awakened and is actually still alive. He wants to unify the world of the living." At this time, an old man spoke, bringing such shocking news to everyone. "What's going on?" someone asked in surprise. "It's in Yongzhou. What do you think is going on?" That person back then, he killed celestial venerables and slayed famous characters that shook the ages. He unified 1/20th of the territory of the living. In the end, after a great tribulation, everyone thought he died at the last moment, but now he has awakened again. "What? It's him?" He actually appeared again. The group of people were stunned. Their expressions completely changed, and the atmosphere became incomparably heavy. They knew that something big was going to happen. Everyone felt that there was a monstrous blood energy rising from Yongzhou. It was as if it was pressing over in an instant, wanting to crush everything in the world. It was unstoppable. Was this a type of psychological effect? Many people were shocked and somewhat suspicious. But the more they sensed and deduced in that direction, the more they trembled and felt a wave of fear. The world of the living was going to change. Many people had a premonition that this was the short and dull moment before the storm. In the end, a terrifying event would erupt. Chapter 1061. Chu Feng and the others returned to the outskirts of the Ji clan's tribe in a hurry. In fact, everyone felt uneasy after hearing the news, and all of them left with grave expressions. That person from Yongzhou back then was too bizarre and terrifying. He was originally a 9-nether demon, but after comprehending the past, he swept through the world and killed anyone who stood in his way. He killed until the sun and moon lost their light, and the world of the living trembled. Thinking back to this day, those who understood that era felt their scalps go numb. "Everyone from the Yi family, aren't you going to stay and rest for a while?" Chu Feng stood outside the tribe and looked at the nearby temporary imperial residence. A group of people were stepping onto the super teleportation domain, the divine magnetic platform. He shouted loudly from behind. He really wanted to communicate with them in private. Just who was that Linoy girl and where were her parents? On the magnetic platform, some people were quite friendly. They turned back with a smile and waved their hands lightly. Then, all of them disappeared in the rain of light and left the desolate border. Yu Province. Dongqing shot a glance at Chu Feng and said, "Don't look anymore. There's something strange about that girl. She doesn't seem like a child at all. Her vitality is too vigorous." Chu Feng looked into the distance again and again, but all that was left outside the Ji tribe was the remains of a temporary imperial residence. Even the divine magnetic platform had automatically burned and turned into magma. Very soon, he calmed down and asked, "Sister Dongqing, just what is the background of that person from Yongzhou?" Dongqing had thick brows, big eyes, a wide nose, and a wide mouth. He said in a low, muffled voice, "His background is so great that it can overturn a piece of history. But let's not talk about him first. Let's talk about you. How did your constitution improve so much?" Chu Feng raised his chin and cleared his throat with a cough. Then, he put his hands behind his back and assumed a disdainful posture. "The pride of a generation should be like me." Dongqing was simple and decisive in dealing with his character. She used her large palm leaf fan hand to cut him and said, "Speak human language. There's a serious problem here. After drinking the true dragon elixir and sleeping in the dragon's nest, someone as talented as me almost ascended. At the last moment, I was greedy for the mortal world and couldn't bear to part with worldly affairs. I resisted the urge to ascend and stayed in the world of the living. Now, my realm is neither high nor low." Seeing him so cocky, his little face flushed red and his smile like a coxcomb. Dongqing was annoyed and almost beat him up. However, at least he knew what he had been through. Knowing that his current physique was comparable to a carefree evolver, Dongqing was not happy. Instead, he furrowed his brows and said, "It's not good to break through so early. I didn't use any catalyst to evolve, so it shouldn't affect me, right?" Chu Feng did not understand. Furthermore, what he drank was true dragon liquid, which was the most nourishing. It should not be enough to exhaust his body and cause an early relapse. Dongqing was very solemn as he said, "Although the true dragon liquid is special and is known to be a heavenly nourishing item, there are still some great figures who suspect that it might lead to premature release and consume one's potential ahead of time." Immediately, Chu Feng could not smile anymore. Although Dongqing said this was only a kind of suspicion and not necessarily the truth, he was still particularly concerned. In this life, he wanted to rise up and kill Tai Wu, Hun Yi, Wan Yu, and the other great heavenly venerables. The early path must be solid and not have any flaws. Otherwise, how could he walk the path of the strongest? Dongqing said, "Of course, our lineage also believes that the true dragon liquid is not a big problem. Only a few great figures who are overly cautious will think so. Your problem lies in actually using the Dragon Cave's terrain to undergo nirvana again. You continuously broke through in such a short time and continuously improve your physique. This is worrying. Going too far is as bad as falling short. You jumped 3 levels in a few days, so how can you not worry about early release? How can I solve this kind of trouble and hidden danger?" Chu Feng frowned. He was not in the mood to be mischievous anymore. "You must not improve your physique in the near future. You must recuperate in the next few years and use supplements that can truly nourish your body to condition your body." Dongqing had a slightly worried expression on her face. After thinking for a while, she believed that Chu Feng had to recuperate. Moreover, to be safe, she had to find a type of substance. Is it that serious? Chu Feng was uncertain in his heart. At the same time, he was also a bit suspicious. Some conservative aristocratic families at the top of the pyramid would rather their disciples be mediocre before the age of 16 and be mortals. They don't care how strong they are at all. Only after the age of 17 or 18 will they begin to soar to the highest heavens. Dongqing said these words. Those were the evolutionary sects that had existed for hundreds of millions of years. They were abnormally conservative because they had experienced all kinds of great calamities in the history of evolution. Of course, The mainstream aristocratic families of the same era believed that these conservatives were too inflexible and did not need to have so many misgivings. Therefore, there were people like the little crow, Ing, and the others who had all kinds of good fortune substances used by their clansmen to improve their physiques. They did not break through their shackles and open their realms. There is a type of substance that can make up for the deficiency in your body, and that is the yang spring. Dongqing mentioned a type of supplement that could be considered a top-notch precious substance in the yang realm. It was very difficult to find and could make up for the deficiency in one's body with excellent effects. However, this kind of thing was too hard to come by. Even clans with Empyreans overseeing things didn't have much in stock. They wouldn't let their disciples easily use it. There were even some orthodoxies that didn't even have a drop. Every drop of this substance surged with yang qi and was known as the yang realm's pure essence. It occasionally appears in the vicinity of the Yang River, but every time there's a trace of it, it will be snatched away by the people guarding there. It is very difficult to collect. The Yang River was an extremely ancient river in the Yang realm. It had existed in the world since ancient times, and its source was even more special. It flowed out from a stone mountain. However, from prehistoric times until now, there had never been anyone who could open up that stone mountain. Those who went to investigate were either dead or disappeared forever, never to appear again. The Yang River flowed through several provinces and didn't decline all year round. It was very hard to imagine how a river flowing out of the stone mountain could flow without stopping and emerge consistently. The great river's heat waves overflowed to the heavens and could melt stone and gold. Ordinary evolvers would vanish once they fell in and die. And in the Yang River, special splashes would occasionally appear. It was like a spring emerging from the ground, and it was accompanied by a sweet fragrance. There were also all kinds of miraculous scenes, as if a divine spring was gushing out of the river. After someone collected it, they discovered that this fragrant substance was a rare, nourishing substance for living beings. It had a special effect, especially on early onset geniuses. Is it very effective? Chu Feng had an astonished expression. This so-called Yang Spring was very mysterious. How did it form? Dongqing nodded and said, "It's very effective." Even the most conservative evolver families admit that this is one of the precious substances that can cure early onset. However, this thing was too difficult to find. Even a line of powerful divine temples fairies didn't have any in stock unless they crossed several provinces and guarded the vicinity of the Yang River. Moreover, it was unknown how many years they would have to wait before they could find a Yang Spring. Chu Feng was speechless. Since they couldn't obtain it, wasn't it the same as saying it in vain? Dongqing said, "There is a substitute. It's a different kind of Yang Spring that grows near the Yin Manor." "You're talking about the Heaven's Pit?" Chu Feng widened his eyes in shock. "That's right. I've seen traces there before. I reckon that it only appears once or twice a year. Normally, it appears at the first glimmer of dawn. You can go there and guard it." Dongqing explained. The Yin Manor of the 9 underworlds was bone-piercingly cold. Normal people would die, without a doubt, if they went there. However, when things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. "Is this substance exactly the same as the Yang Spring?" Chu Feng asked. Dongqing nodded and said, "It's almost the same, and the effect is even better. Some people call it Grandma Meng's soup." "What? Grandma Meng's soup?" Chu Feng was quite speechless after hearing this. How could it be this name? Even if he could find it, he didn't dare to drink it. Dongqing nodded and said, "Yes, the soup is very sweet. Not only can it nourish the body, but it can also make people forget their worries. Of course, there's also a side effect, which is that it makes people easily forgetful." This was still a side effect? It was extremely serious, all right? If he had to forget the past, Chu Feng wouldn't drink it even if he was beaten to death. Dongqing looked at him and said, "It's not a big problem. I'll recover after sleeping for a few days." He had always heard of Grandma Meng's soup in the past, but it was only a folk legend. To think that it actually existed. Furthermore, it was a great tonic. This made Chu Feng really dumbfounded and very scared. Dong Qing sighed and said, "This thing, you have to find it yourself later. The young miss and I will be away for a long time. I have to find Grandma Meng's soup myself and drink it myself. Am I crazy?" Chu Feng mumbled. "Little Peng, you're back." At this moment, someone in the tribe shouted. He walked as if he was flying, and when he got close, he directly slapped Chu Feng's shoulder. "Uncle, who are you calling?" Chu Feng glared at him. "I'm calling you." The big man smiled honestly and said, "Didn't you have a name?" Brother Haishin and the elder thought about it together and finally thought of a good name for you. When Ji Hu, Fat Dumpling, and the others heard the news, they all ran to the village entrance and enthusiastically called him Little Peng. Chu Feng immediately exploded. This was really retribution. He was unhappy that it had landed on his head. Why was he given such an unlucky name? Even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't accept it. "It sounds too bad. I don't accept it." "Nonsense, this name sounds so good." The great Peng hates the sky for being too low when it spreads its wings. Soaring for 90,000 miles. The group of people exclaimed. The simple and honest uncle explained enthusiastically and said, "Don't worry, your real name is Ji Dapeng, and your nickname is Little Peng." Chu Feng's cheeks twitched. With a dark light, he said, "My name is Ji Dade, and I already have a name. Whoever calls me Ji Dapeng, I'll fight him." "What Ji Dade? It sounds so bad." "How can it be as good as the word Peng? It has a profound meaning and a grand plan. You're still young and don't know what a Peng is. In the future, Uncle will bring you to dig out a nest of mountain eagles and explain it to you. Then you'll understand." Chu Feng, he couldn't go on like this anymore. He decisively ran away with Dong Qing to the back of the mountain and stayed in the divine temple, unwilling to leave. However, on that day, Dong Qing said goodbye to him. She might be gone for 2 or 3 years to do dangerous things, and it would be difficult for her to return for a long time. "Sister Dong Qing, what will I do if you leave for so long?" Chu Feng was still a bit reluctant. He was grateful to Dong Qing, much more so than to the fairy of the divine temple and the old lady. He could see that although Dong Qing was boorish and often beat him up, she treated him well from the bottom of her heart. Something big has happened in the world of the living. Can't you feel it? That person from Yongzhou has come into being. It's really boundlessly terrifying. He's actually still alive. No one can imagine. Dong Qing sighed. "How strong can he be?" Chu Feng asked. "His blood energy has already passed through the famed mountain where he hibernated and broke through the blue dome of heaven. Now, more than half of Yongzhou is dark red. The stronger the person, the deeper the feeling. When one gazes in that direction, they will feel a stabbing pain in their mind and tremble incessantly. It's indescribable." These were Dong Qing's words, and they made people's hair stand on end. Dong Qing sighed. "And this person is more or less related to the missing patriarch of the young Miss bloodline. The young Miss has no choice but to go and make a trip. Of course, they couldn't approach him rashly. Instead, they had to understand everything about that person from Yongzhou and explore every bit of information about him. Then, they would find countermeasures and how to communicate without danger." That day, before Dong Qing left, she left behind enough rare minerals for Chu Feng to boil himself for 3 years without a problem. In the end, she thought about it and went to find a fairy of the divine temple. In the end, she returned and gave Chu Feng a small jade bottle. Inside was a medicinal pill the size of half a longan. She told Chu Feng that this was something she had asked for from the young miss. She used half a drop of blood of 6 paths of reincarnation and various rare materials to refine 12 precious pills. They were all priceless treasures. If news of this half a pill got out, it would definitely cause a storm of blood. Chu Feng's mood was complex. It wasn't like he hadn't seen the blood of 6 paths of reincarnation before and had used it to save his life, but it had all been wasted. He didn't expect it to be so astonishing. Half a drop was enough to change everything. At the same time, he was very moved. He could feel that Dong Qing had asked for this half a pill entirely, because she was afraid something would happen to him. Sure enough, Dongqing told him that even if he couldn't find Granny Meng's soup, with his half a pill in hand, he could grind it into a fine powder and slowly consume it. It could also last him 4 years. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, 4 years had passed. However, Chu Feng still hadn't found Granny Meng's soup, which made him frown. On this day, when the sky was just beginning to brighten, he heard a strange sound while standing at the edge of the heaven pit. He cautiously looked down and unexpectedly saw a stone coffin climbing up the stone steps. It was extremely difficult. Finally, it's been 4 years. This old man has finally climbed up again and is going to see the light of day again. It really wasn't easy, so difficult. Ancient dust boat, you little bastard, just you wait. When I break free from this stone coffin in the future, I'll definitely let you know why flowers are so red and why this old man's face is so brilliant. The 9 underworlds was roaring with an expression of great bitterness and deep hatred. During these 4 years, he had been extremely stifled and had experienced all kinds of life and death dangers in Manor. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.